والصلاة والسلام على عبد الله ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما رحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. My dear brothers and sisters, apologies for the slightly late start today. We had some important work to take care of in the masjid. And as I said, when you're doing a live class in a masjid, you are very much dependent after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the situation of the masjid. Whether people are busy, whether there's things going on. So we had some important matters to take care of. We had a slightly late start today. But alhamdulillah, yesterday we managed to catch up a lot of what was missing. I also want to tell the brothers and sisters, and I will give you more information on this later, that we will be changing our timings for the last 10 days. And there's two reasons for that. First of all, because the last 10 days are different in terms of our time. We're more awake in the night and so on. But also because of the time change in the UK. So almost pretty much in agreement with the last 10 days, the clocks change in the UK. So all our timings change, our salah times change because of daylight savings time coming in any British summertime. So for that reason, we'll be giving an updated schedule. So I'm not going to announce it yet because it's not confirmed what the schedule will be, but it will be different. Most likely, it will be one single lesson earlier on in the afternoon. That's probably what's going to happen. Slightly longer session, one time in the afternoon before until Maghrib time. So extending our afternoon session a bit earlier and not having a morning session. That's the most likely what's going to happen, inshallah ta'ala. We'll get back to you and confirm that, but do expect a change on Sunday, inshallah ta'ala, because Sunday is the time when the clocks change. It's also the first day of the last 10 days, as opposed to the last 10 nights. I think it's Saturday night it starts, but Sunday daytime. Expect a change in the class times, inshallah, and we'll announce that probably on Friday, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, yawm al-jumu'ah. Now we came to the story of Dawood and Sulaiman. إذ يحكمان في الحرث.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم اغفر لنا ولشيخنا وللمستمعين ولجميع المسلمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. قال الله تعالى وداود وسليمان إذ يحكمان في الحرث إذ نفشت فيه غنم القوم وكنا لحكمهم شاهدين. And mention Dawood and Sulaiman when they judged concerning the field, when the sheep of a people overran it at night, and we were witnesses to their judgment.
Now, this is a story regarding two of the prophets, Dawood and Sulaiman, alayhim as-salatu was-salam. And Dawood and Sulaiman, those two prophets, of course, the story of Dawood has already come, how Dawood came to have leadership within Bani Israel. It came in which surah? This one you know for sure.
Dawood.
فقاتل داود جالوت وآتاه الله الملك والحكمة وعلمه مما يشاء ولولا دفع الله الناس بعضهم ببعض. What's the surah? Baqarah. Surah Al-Baqarah. In the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, the end of the second juz of Surah Al-Baqarah. The end of the second juz of Surah Al-Baqarah. The reason I ask you those questions, by the way, there is a benefit in it. I myself am not the best. I'll be honest. I'm not the best person at naming the surah that something is in. Like subhanAllah, ajib. Sometimes you can recite the whole surah. If somebody said to you, for example, this ayah, for example, you can recite the ayah and the surah from memory, but subhanAllah, sometimes you can't remember what surah it is. It does help to test yourself like that, to ask yourself, to have a good working knowledge of the Qur'an. That's one of the objectives of these classes. Just to know where things come in the Qur'an. The rulings of divorce, which surah is it in? For example, the story of Dawood, the beginning of the story in Surah Al-Baqarah. And Dawood, his son was Sulaiman, and here the two of them were asked to make a judgment regarding a field of crops that were ruined at night by someone's sheep. So what happened is the sheep broke into or somehow got into, from that person's negligence, the sheep got into the field and they destroyed all of his crops. And Dawood gave a judgment that the sheep belonged to the person whose crops were destroyed. And now, khalas, you lost your sheep. Your sheep belong to the person whose crops were destroyed. So take the sheep from the person who was negligent with regard to the sheep and give the sheep to the person whose any crops. Like in the next ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal said, فَفَهَّمْنَاهَا Sulaiman, we gave Sulaiman the correct judgment. And the judgment of Sulaiman was that the sheep are temporarily transferred into the ownership of the one who's owned the field. He benefits from the sheep, from their wool and from the things that without killing them. He benefits from the sheep, and they have to work to restore his crops. The person who owned the sheep has to pay for his crops to be restored. Once his crops are restored to the same state, the sheep go back to the person who owned the sheep. And this is the better ruling, the correct ruling. Why? Because at the end of it, what happened? The owner of the sheep keeps his sheep, and the owner of the crops gets his crops back. Both of them return with the wealth that they had originally. And both of them get back the wealth they had originally. But in order to make up for the damage to the crops, he has to transfer the sheep temporarily to the ownership of let's call him the farmer, so that he can benefit from those sheep while his crops are being grown again, and the damage the sheep made is being repaired. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave that ruling to Sulaiman. That Sulaiman was correct in his judgment that he made.
فَفَهَّمْنَاهَا سُلَيْمَانَ وَكُلًّا آتَيْنَا حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا وَسَخَّرْنَا مَعَ دَاوُودَ الْجِبَالَ يُسَبِّحْنَ وَالطَّيْرَ وَكُنَّا فَاعِلِينَ. And we gave understanding of it to Sulaiman, and to each of them we gave judgment and knowledge. And we subjected the mountains to exalt us along with Dawood, that also the birds, and we were doing that.
Judgment and knowledge here, judgment refers to prophethood and the ability to judge between people, and knowledge of the religion.
وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ صَنْعَةَ لَبُوسٍ لَكُمْ لِتُحْصِنَكُمْ مِنْ بَأْسِكُمْ فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ شَاكِرُونَ. And we taught him the fashioning of coats of armor to protect you from your enemy in battle. So will you then be grateful?
Allah Azza wa Jal taught Dawood how to make body armor for battle. And until then, the understanding of the ayahs, until then they did not know how to make, the people did not know how to make body armor to protect them in battle.
وَلِسُلَيْمَانَ الرِّيحَ عَاصِفَةً تَجْرِي بِأَمْرِهِ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ الَّتِي بَارَكْنَا فِيهَا وَكُنَّا بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَالِمِينَ. And to Sulaiman we subjected the wind, blowing forcefully, proceeding by his command toward the land which we had blessed, and we are ever of all things knowing.
I just want to check something. And the land that he blessed is Ardu Sham. And the land that Allah Azza wa Jal blessed is the Levant. And that's always generally, you hear it referred to as the blessed land. Philistine and the surrounding area, you always hear it referred to as the land that Allah blessed. And they say the reason for that is not just the religious blessing. Like as a land, it's a fertile land. Things grow there, it has greenery. Some of them said the greenery is constant because of the climate. It's not, the greenery comes all the time. It's a land that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed. We heard that in the beginning of Surah Al-Isra. إِلَى الْمَسْجِدِ الْأَقْصَى الَّذِي بَارَكْنَا حَوْلَهُ. The Masjid Al-Aqsa, that we blessed the land around it. And it was blessed no doubt by religious knowledge, because this was the place of many of the Anbiya, all of the Anbiya of Bani Israel in reality, are centered around that land, Ash-Sham. So you have from the time of Ishaq, Ibrahim and Ishaq, all the way until the time of Nabiyullah Isa, alayhim as-salatu was-salam. And this control Sulaiman had of the wind and the jinn and so on, it was not by magic, rather it was evidence of his prophethood.
وَمِنَ الشَّيَاطِينِ مَن يَغُوصُونَ لَهُ وَيَعْمَلُونَ عَمَلًا دُونَ ذَلِكَ وَكُنَّا لَهُمْ حَافِظِينَ. And of the devils were those who dived for him and did work other than that, and we were of them a guardian.
Here, I find it slightly problematic, although it needs research. The clear Qur'an here changes the word devils to the word jinn. And also Sahih International has it as a footnote, that the devils means the word jinn. I understand it, but what I find a little bit problematic here is that Allah Azza wa Jal used the word shayateen. And elsewhere in the Qur'an, in Surah Sad, if I'm not mistaken, it mentions that they were subjugated to Sulaiman, and they were basically chained. I don't think it's necessary to change this word to the word jinn, to avoid the fact that they were devils. They were shayateen. From them the afarit, the ifrit. The story of Bilqis, the queen of Saba, and the ifrit of the jinn who brought it. This is like, I think that it's better to keep the word as shayateen rather than to make it general, because we know there are believing jinn and disbelieving jinn. Like Allah Azza wa Jal subjugated them to the command of Sulaiman, and they were almost, if you like, enslaved to him. It's not necessary for us to move away from the word shaitan to the word believing jinn here, or to make it general, rather keep it as the word shayateen. And I checked Tafseer as-Sa'di, and he doesn't change it. And he says also the shayateen, that Allah Azza wa Jal, the shayateen and the afarit, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala subjugated them, so that they were, if you like, enslaved to the command of Sulaiman. And that itself is more consistent with the word shaitan, because in reality, who is normally enslaved? Typically, the ones who are enslaved are the ones that are defeated in the battle. Wallahu alam. Sahih, you can go back to the books of Tafseer. Like Muhsin Khan keeps it as the word devils from the jinn. The same way that the kuffar are captured in battle and enslaved and made to work for you, so the shayateen were made to work for Sulaiman, among the shayateen. Those that dived for him, to bring him pearls, and performed other duties, and Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who guarded them. And here the clear Qur'an is interesting. It says that Allah Azza wa Jal kept them in check, and that is the correct tafsir, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. that Allah Azza wa Jal kept them from overcoming Sulaiman. Not that Allah saved them, Allah saved the devils and kept them safe. And it doesn't mean that Allah Azza wa Jal kept them safe. Rather here what it means is that He stopped them from overcoming their limits. He stopped them from going over their limits. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Naam.
وأيوب إذ نادى ربه أني مسني الضر وأنت أرحم الراحمين. And mention Ayyub when he called to his Lord, indeed adversity has touched me and you are the most merciful of the merciful.
Now, before that, I wanted to explain something. It's why it's something very important in terms of translating the meaning of the Qur'an. And that is that we don't go away from the apparent meaning of the text. Unless we have an evidence for doing so from the early generations. Or you can say, if something is an impossibility to be true, it cannot possibly be true. It's from the mutashabihat, the things that there has more than one meaning. And it's one of the meanings is mumtani', and it's impossible for it to be true. That's a different situation. Sometimes people go away from it too quickly. That's what my question was regarding that. Now, I don't have a major issue with the translation in that previous ayah, but I want to explain the perspective we're coming from. Is that don't go away from the word that is used in Arabic to a different word unless either it is from the mutashabihat and one of them is mumtani', it's not possible. For example, one of them would indicate making shirk or something like that. Sahih at that point is different. Or at least when you have a tafseer from the Salaf for that regard, you have the early generations brought that tafseer, from the tabi'een and the Sahaba, those who brought that tafseer. So it's just be careful of that. And for example, we could ask the question in the previous ayah, is there any reason why those jinn that were enslaved to Sulaiman could not have been shayateen? And is there anything that would, in our religion, that would make that impossible, or would make that unlikely, or would make that? The reality is there isn't. The Sahaba used to have, when they carried out the battles, they enslaved from the kuffar who used to work for them. And they were imprisoned, enslaved, and they would work for them, and they would they would carry out tasks for them. But it's not mumtani', there's nothing in it which is an impossibility, so there's no need to change the word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used. Allahumma, unless you look at the tafsir of the Salaf, and for this, to be honest, there is the best resource is Tafsir al-Tabari. For two reasons. Tafsir al-Tabari, the aqeedah is salima. There's no aqeedah issues. And the second reason is that it is the biggest and the best of all of the books of tafsir, and it's dealing with the narrations of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and what they said about the ayat. And that's why there's no aqeedah issues, because reality is the Sahaba and Tabi'een didn't have those issues that came later on. So if you go back there and see, did some people say the believing jinn were enslaved to him? And if they didn't say the believing jinn were enslaved to him, which is possible, and you have to look into it. If they didn't say, if there's not a view like that, then keep the word as it is. Even if there is a view like that, if there's contradicting views, one person said one and one said the other, don't go away from the word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used unless you have a clear justification for doing so. And that's a general principle within tafsir. So I think it's important inside of the translation that we don't do so because we personally think, oh, this must mean this, and this must mean that. So that's important. Ayyub, alayhi salatu wassalam, he was touched by an affliction. And the story of that affliction will come later on. مَسَّنِيَ الشَّيْطَانُ بِنُصْبٍ وَعَذَابٍ, that the shaitan afflicted Ayyub with a very severe hardship. And that was because the shaitan claimed before Allah Azza wa Jal that the only reason that Ayyub was grateful was because he had never been touched with hardship. And that's the reason he was grateful, because he'd never known difficulty. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to show the gratitude of Ayyub was not limited to times of any ease. So Allah Azza wa Jal permitted the shaitan to cause Ayyub an affliction in his health, in his family, and in his wealth, and he lost all of them. And he remained patient and grateful. And the story will come in more detail later on. So he lost his health, his wealth, and his family. And he said, and he felt that, as we mentioned, I think earlier, in Ayyub, he felt that Allah has given me so many blessings, and I have no right to feel anything but gratitude for him, no matter what happens to me. And then he finally made this dua, أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الضُّرِّ, I have been touched by an affliction, adversity, and you are the most merciful of those who have mercy. What is implied by it? May Allah remove this affliction that has touched me.
فاستجبنا له فكشفنا ما به من ضر وآتيناه أهله ومثلهم معهم رحمة من عندنا وذكرى للعابدين. And we responded to him and removed what afflicted him of adversity. And we gave him back his family and the like thereof with them as mercy from us and a reminder for the worshippers of Allah.
Naam. So Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ. فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ. We answered his dua. And that is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Jalla fi ula, that he answers the dua of his servants when they call upon him. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِي إِذَا دَعَانِ. I answer the dua of the one who calls upon me when he calls upon me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us. So he answered Ayyub. And this gives the Prophet ﷺ strength. The Prophet ﷺ, his heart, that make dua to Allah and Allah will answer you. Allah answered Ayyub, and Allah answered Nuh, and Allah answered Ibrahim, and Allah answered Zakariya, and Allah Azza wa Jal answered Yunus. All these prophets that are mentioned, Allah answered them. And we removed the adversity that touched him. And we gave him back his family, and Allah returned to him his wealth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمِثْلَهُمْ مَعَهُمْ, and the like thereof, meaning that Allah Azza wa Jal increased him and gave him more than he had in the beginning. And that is عاقبة الصبر على المصيبة. That's what you get when you are patient upon a musibah. Allah Azza wa Jal will save you from it, and Allah will give you better than what you had in the beginning. رحمة من عندنا, as a mercy from us, وذكرى للعابدين, so that the worshippers of Allah can remember Allah's favor and remember for themselves that when they're afflicted by adversity, to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer their dua, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove their affliction, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them better than what they had before. And this is not only for Ayyub. This dua and this outcome is not limited to Ayyub. Rather, it is from the evidences of the word dhikr wa dhikra lil abidin. This is not only for Ayyub. Rather, this is for every worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who calls upon him sincerely.
وإسماعيل وإدريس وذا الكفل كل من الصابرين. And mention Ismail and Idris and Dhul Kifl, all were of the patient.
In here, there's the mention of Idris, which we said before, as was a prophet that was not mentioned in the ayat of Surah Al-An'am, and Dhul Kifl. And Dhul Kifl, they differed about whether he was a prophet or not. Like in the strong view, and many took the view that he is a prophet, because he's mentioned among all the prophets here in Surah Al-Anbiya, and he's mentioned in the middle of the prophets. So that's why the context, it doesn't really lean towards that he was a righteous man. And it leans towards the fact that he's a prophet, because he's being mentioned in Surah Al-Anbiya among all of the mention of the prophets. And so here, it doesn't, the context indicates that he's a prophet. And Dhul Kifl is the one that I believe they call him, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best, that they call him Isaiah, something like that. That's what Muhsin Khan says. Now, Idris, they call him Enoch. In the Enoch, in the any translation as it's brought into English, and Dhul Kifl, Isaiah. Like, and it seems to me, Wallahu A'lam, that he is a prophet, because he's mentioned, Dhul Kifl is mentioned here among all the other prophets, among a group, the prophets come before him and after him in the ayat. It indicates that he's a prophet, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best.
وَأَدْخَلْنَاهُمْ فِي رَحْمَتِنَا إِنَّهُمْ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. And we admitted them into our mercy. Indeed, they were of the righteous.
No.
وَذَا النُّونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا فَظَنَّ أَن لَّن نَّقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ فَنَادَىٰ فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ أَن لَّا إِلَٰهَ إِلَّا أَنتَ سُبْحَانَكَ إِنِّي كُنتُ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. And mention the man of the fish, when he went off in anger and thought that we would not decree anything upon him, and he called out within the darkness, there is no deity except you, exalted are you, indeed I have been of the wrongdoers.
Naam, Afwan, in the list of the prophets, we've now completed the 25. So how do we remember the 25? So the way we remember the 25 is we start with Surah Al-An'am, which is 18 prophets mentioned in one place in Surah Al-An'am. We add to that the prophets of the Arabian Peninsula. The prophets of the Arabian Peninsula were Hud, and Salih, and Shu'aib, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa alayhim salatu wassalam. That brings us to how many? That's 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. There remain 3 prophets. 2 of them are mentioned in Surah Al-Anbiya in this ayah. Idris and Dhul Kifl. That makes 23 and 24. So Surah Al-An'am plus the prophets of the Arabian Peninsula plus the 2 that are mentioned in Surah Al-Anbiya, Idris and Dhul Kifl, there remains 1. And it's already passed. Who is it? All of you know it. And nobody has everybody knows it. Ayyub came in Surah Al-An'am. 18 came in Surah Al-An'am. Shall we go over them? وَتِلْكَ حُجَّتُنَا آتَيْنَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ عَلَى قَوْمِهِ نَرْفَعُ دَرَجَاتٍ مَّن نَّشَاءُ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ حَكِيمٌ عَلِيمٌ وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ كُلًّا هَدَيْنَا وَنُوحًا هَدَيْنَا مِن قَبْلُ ومن ذريته داود وسليمان وأيوب ويوسف وموسى وهارون وكذلك نجزي المحسنين وإسماعيل وزكريا ويحيى وعيسى وإلياس كل.
So is it not Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
Lut is mentioned. وإسماعيل واليسع ويونس ولوطا وإسماعيل واليسع ويونس ولوطا وكلا فضلنا على العالمين. So that makes 18. Lut is included. After the 18 come the 4 prophets of the Arabian Peninsula. They are Hud and Salih and Shu'aib and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sulaiman came in the ayah in Surah Al-An'am.
We haven't had Adam.
Adam, mashallah, tabarakallah. That's the one. That's the one you missed. Adam. And so the way you remember it is 18 in Surah Al-An'am, plus the prophets of the Arabian Peninsula, plus the 2 mentioned in Surah Al-Anbiya, Idris and Dhul Kifl, plus Adam, alayhimus salatu wassalam. And that makes 25 prophets that are mentioned by name in the Qur'an. That's al-qawl al-mashhur, the famous qawl. And there's ikhtilaf about some of them. Dhul Kifl, was he a prophet or not? Dhul Qarnayn, there's a view. Was he a prophet or not? Yani that would be extra if he was. Like in the mashhur is that he was not a prophet, he was a righteous king. Khadr, there's khilaf about it, but he's not mentioned by name. The Noon is the man of the fish. And again, was it a whale or was it not a whale? I personally would keep it as the word fish and just keep it general. Like in Allahu Alam, the famous view is that it was a whale. That is the famous story is that it was a whale. Allahu Alam, Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. When he went off in anger. And he went off in anger because his people disbelieved in him and did not accept. And he thought we would not decree anything against him. And we would not restrain him. In this here, people misunderstand it. They read the ayah as he thought that we could not harm him. And that's not the case. And he knew that Allah's punishment could come upon anyone. He's a prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. He knows the punishment of Allah can come upon anybody. It wasn't the case that he believed that there's no punishment for me. Like he thought he didn't do anything wrong. And he did a mistake, he did a sin, no doubt. Like as is the habit of the prophets, they don't sin deliberately. And they don't sin with the intention that I'm going to do this and disobey Allah. No, rather what he did is he thought that he would not be blamed for what he did. Because he left the city of, I think it's Nineveh. He left the city before the command of Allah came to leave. Like he left it when he saw the disbelief of his people. So when he saw his people had disbelieved and he saw the punishment was coming, remember the punishment was, it came to the edge of the city. He knew the punishment was coming. So he got angry with his people for their disbelief and he left. However, he left before the command of Allah Azza wa Jal came for him to leave. And he thought that Allah would not punish him for that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that he boarded a ship, and that when the ship sailed, it became in a storm, and the habit of the people at that time was to give an offering to the sea. That's what they say in the books of stories of the prophets. Wallahu a'lam. In other words, they would throw a person overboard. Or if you want to say, when the ship was overladen, they would throw the cargo overboard and then they would start throwing the people overboard. Like they had a belief about the permissibility or the benefit of throwing people overboard. So it came to the time to throw people overboard, and they drew lots about who will be thrown overboard. So Yunus, his name kept on coming up. And of course, they didn't want to throw him. They recognized him as a righteous man. We don't have any need to throw you. Let's draw lots again. Like when his name kept coming up, he understood that Allah Azza wa Jal had willed for him that he be the one who is thrown overboard, because of the fact that he left before the command of Allah Azza wa Jal came to him. And he was thrown overboard and he was swallowed by the fish or the whale. And now comes the point of where the story resumes in Surah Al-Anbiya. And he called out within the darknesses. The darknesses is the dark of the night, the dark of the sea, and the dark of the belly of the fish. And all three of them have darknesses. And it's dark in that belly of the fish, and the sea is dark, and the night is dark. La ilaha illa anta subhanak. So he calls out with what? With tawheed, kalimat al-tawheed. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illa ant subhanak. Exalted are you. And you are perfect and I am imperfect. You have no flaws and I have flaws. Inni kuntu min al-dhalimin. I was from the people who oppressed myself. Now it's interesting, he doesn't ask Allah for anything. He implies a dua here. He doesn't ask it directly, and he doesn't say, oh Allah, take me out from the belly of the fish. He simply says, oh Allah, I was from the people who wronged myself, implying that I've repented from my sin that I did. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered his dua. Now,
just a quick question. Many people are saying, is Luqman not part of the list of prophets?
No, Luqman was not a prophet. He was a wise man. Luqman was a wise man and not a prophet. And Luqman, that's why in Luqman, he was a wali of Allah Azza wa Jal, yani a beloved servant of Allah, who Allah Azza wa Jal gave him wisdom. And that's why he's one of the few non-prophets mentioned in the Qur'an. There's not many. Actually, it's interesting, you could tally up the number of non-prophets that are mentioned in the Qur'an in a praiseworthy way. Any people who are praised in the Qur'an, but they were not prophets by name. There are Dhul Qarnayn, if we say that he wasn't a prophet, ala qawl mashhur, and Luqman, and Al-Khadir is not mentioned by name though. There's a lot of people mentioned in the Qur'an by implication. Sahaba, Abu Bakr is mentioned, ثاني اثنين إذ هما في الغار, but by name that are praised in the Qur'an, by name, but they were not from the prophets. Maryam.
فاستجبنا له ونجيناه من الغم وكذلك ننجي المؤمنين. So we responded to him and saved him from the distress, and thus do we save the believers.
And what's powerful about this is not just that Allah answered the dua of Yunus in that gham. By the way, the gham, they say the difference between al-ham and al-hazan and al-gham is that al-ham is worrying about the future, and al-hazan is worrying about the past, and grieving over the past, being stressed about the past. And al-gham is worrying about the present. In your present disaster, وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْغَمِّ, we saved him from his distress that he was in at that moment. وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And this is from the strongest evidences that this dua and the dua of the prophets mentioned here, like Ayyub, is not unique to them. Nor is them being answered unique to them. Because you could say in that situation, he only answered Yunus because he was a Nabi. But Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't say that. وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Every believer who makes this dua, we will save him from his gham the same way we saved Yunus. For this dua should be on your tongue all the time, and you and me. La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu min al-dhalimin. And Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala has a book about it, or a treatise about it. And we explained it one time in the one of the conferences or something like that. I think you can find it on the maybe Kalima, something like that, website in Dubai, a YouTube channel. We explained the story of Ayyub, I think Shaykh Abdul Rahman did it, and the story of Yunus, I think I did it. So I think it was that way around. And there's a lot of benefits in that dua. But that dua is for every believer. وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Every believer will be saved the way that Yunus was saved if they come with what Yunus came with, which is not just words. So he didn't, anyone can say La ilaha illallah. What's the dalil? Who said La ilaha illallah and it didn't benefit them? Ma'ruf in the story we've taken it so far.
The
Fir'aun. What did he say? La ilaha illa alladhi amanat bihi banu Israel. He said, I testify there is no God that deserves to be worshipped except the God of Bani Israel. Al-an, now you testify when you see the angels coming to take your soul. Now you testify. For here, it has to be a testimony that is true from the heart. And it has to encompass the tawbah of Yunus that he made. Inni kuntu min al-dhalimeen. I'm truly from the people that oppress myself. And from that tawbah alone, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him out of his situation and out of his distress. Now.
وزكريا إذ نادى ربه رب لا تذرني فردا وأنت خير الوارثين. And mentioned Zakariya when he called to his Lord, my Lord, do not leave me alone with no heir while you are the best of inheritors.
Where's this been mentioned already in the Qur'an?
Surah Maryam, right?
Surah Maryam, the beginning. ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا in Surah Maryam, and Surah Ali Imran. هنالك دعا زكريا ربه قال رب هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة. For he made this dua, ربي لا تذرني فردا وأنت خير الوارثين. Don't leave me alone. You are the best of inheritors. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be there for eternity after every other, and after every being passes away. Except those that Allah Azza wa Jal wills to live for eternity, and they only live because of Him. And the people of Jannah who live for eternity only live because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as for the earth and everything that is in it, all of it will pass to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it belongs to Him now, and it will belong to Him then. Like on that day, there will be no dispute because every single person has died, and everything, the only thing that remains, وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. What will remain is the face of your Lord, full of majesty and honor.
فاستجبنا له ووهبنا له يحيى وأصلحنا له زوجه إنهم كانوا يسارعون في الخيرات ويدعوننا رغبا ورهبا وكانوا لنا خاشعين. So we responded to him, and we gave to him Yahya, and amended for him his wife. Indeed, they used to hasten to good deeds and supplicate us in hope and fear, and they were to us humbly submissive.
Now, I don't understand the footnote in the Sahih International. In the Sahih, I do understand it. Like, and I find it like it's not needed where they take the word dua and say this dua just means worship in general. Like, why can it not mean dua? In Sahih, dua and ibadah are used interchangeably in the Qur'an. It's true that the word dua and the word worship are often used meaning the same thing. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي, عن دعائي. So dua and ibadah can be used interchangeably in the Qur'an. Like for the main purpose of the translation, there's no need to take the word dua and cross it out and say it means worship. Dua means dua. They used to make dua to us in hope and fear. And both the clear Qur'an and Muhsin Khan, both of them kept it as dua. I don't see the need to explain that to people. Sahih, there's no doubt that dua includes worship, but there's no need to change that meaning and bring a different one. So we responded to him and we gave him Yahya, and we made his wife fertile and he amended for him his wife. That's again, wallahi, it's a word that just nobody will understand. He amended his wife. He amended his wife. Like it doesn't. The problem is, it might be very accurate for the Arabic, like in the reality is nobody will read that and understand it. I don't think anybody can read the word he amended his wife and understand what it means. Because it's not used in English. My wife has been amended. And it's not used in English. For cured would be better. And he made her right, maybe made her well, made her back able to bear children, and it needs something amended. Just doesn't. Nobody would understand what it means. They used to hasten to do good deeds, and they used to make dua to us in hope and fear. And they were humbly submissive. These 4 things, my dear brothers and sisters, this is the reason their dua was answered. And if you bring these 4 things, your dua will be answered too. إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا يُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ. هذه الأولى. The first one, they used to rush to do good deeds. وَيَدْعُونَنَا رَغَبًا وَرَهَبًا. And they made dua to us in fear and hope. And he saw dua in a state of fearing Allah as well as hoping for Allah's reward. Being scared of Allah's punishment and hoping for Allah's reward. وَكَانُوا لَنَا خَاشِعِينَ. And humbling yourself and being submissive before Allah. And if you bring these things, you could say 4, you could say 5. You could make dua separate and fear and hope separate. If you want to say. If you do these things, your dua will be accepted. And if you can bring that you rush to do good deeds and you have hope in Allah and wish for His reward and fear of Allah and you're scared of His punishment and you are submissive and humble before Allah, for Allah will answer your dua the way that He answered their dua. Because Allah mentions this ayah in conclusion of what? In conclusion of all of the prophets whose dua was answered. إِنَّهُمْ يعني هؤلاء الأنبياء, these prophets, كَانُوا يُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ. They used to rush to do good deeds. And that means they didn't used to delay. They didn't used to say, I'll do it next year, I'll do it next year. They used to rush to do good deeds. وَيَدْعُونَنَا رَغَبًا وَرَهَبًا. They made dua to Allah, hoping for Allah's reward and fearing Allah's punishment. وَكَانُوا لَنَا خَاشِعِينَ. And the ayah also is a refutation of the view of some of the Sufiya who said that it is incomplete in faith to hope for Jannah and to be scared of the fire. They said that that is a low level of Iman. Rather, the high level of Iman is just that you love Allah and you don't want Jannah and you don't fear the fire. Because you love Allah so much that you no longer care about reward and punishment. For this qawl of theirs is qawlun batil, because the best of the people who are the prophets, they used to wish for Jannah and they used to be scared of the fire. For it's a common view people say, like they say that, hatta the reason I mention it is not just because there's a deviant group who has it, because even people regularly, and you feel like, is it wrong that I do this salah because I want Jannah? Like people have that shubha a lot. People say, is it, you know, I come to Fajr prayer because I just want Allah I want Jannah. Is that wrong? That I don't come for, you know, out of just pure love of being in the masjid and like I actually come because I want Allah to answer my dua. That's not wrong. Rather, that's how the prophets used to be, alayhimus salatu wassalam. They used to have love of Allah and they loved Allah more than anything else. And they loved what Allah loved and they hated what Allah hated. But they used to love and want to be from the people of Jannah and hate and be scared of being from the people of the fire. And there's nothing more complete in Iman than them. So don't be fooled by this doubt or confusion where people say that wanting Jannah or doing things for the sake of Jannah is something which is incomplete in Iman.
والتي أحصنت فرجها فنفخنا فيها من روحنا وجعلناها وبنها آية للعالمين. And mention the one who guarded her chastity. So we blew into her garment through our angel, and we made her and her son a sign for the worlds.
Na'am, the one who guarded her chastity is Maryam, alayhi salam, and that we breathed into her garment, yani through Jibreel. That is how Allah, that's the sabab that Allah Azza wa Jal decreed for Isa to be born with. Otherwise, Allah Azza wa Jal does not need Jibreel to blow, nor does He need for Maryam to be there, nor does He need anything, subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَن يَقُولَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونَ. If Allah wants something to be, He says be and it is. He doesn't need neither Jibreel, but Allah makes asbab for things, and Allah makes causes for things. So Allah Azza wa Jal commanded for Jibreel to blow into her garment. You need to blow into her shirt or into her garment. And from that, Allah decreed that Isa be born. And he made for Maryam and Isa to be a sign for all of the people, for the men and the jinn.
إن هذه أمتكم أمة واحدة وأنا ربكم فاعبدون. Indeed, this, your religion, is one religion, and I am your Lord, so worship me.
Naam, here the ummah is referring to the way of the prophets. O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you are not different in terms of your religion to these prophets. These are your people. These are the people that you're coming from. This is where you are coming from. You are one of these people. You belong to this community of people. The community of the Anbiya. You, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, belong to this community of the Anbiya. Now it's interesting that Surah Al-Anbiya, the word Anbiya isn't mentioned in it. Not to the best of my knowledge. I can't think of the word. Is it mentioned? The word Anbiya in Surah Al-Anbiya. The Anbiya are mentioned, like in the word. Let's check before we say it isn't. And in my mind, I couldn't think of a time when it's mentioned. Let's check. Now it's not mentioned. The word Anbiya came in the words twice in Surah Al Imran and once in Surah An-Nisa. So it's interesting that the name of the surah is not mentioned. It's not every time is the name of the surah mentioned in the surah. Whereas so far we heard Al-Baqarah, Al-Imran, Al-Nisa, Al-Ma'idah, Al-An'am, Al-A'raf, Al-Anfal. At-Tawbah isn't mentioned, right? But if we say Surah Bara'ah, it is mentioned. Bara'atun min Allah. Tawbah, and it might be mentioned in the surah also. Like that, is it mentioned? Naam, it is mentioned. It is mentioned. أَلَمْ يَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ يَقْبَلُ التَّوْبَةَ عَنْ عِبَادِهِ. It is mentioned. Like it's not like it's mentioned as a word in the surah. Like the most important thing is the concept of tawbah is mentioned. Like it's also mentioned as a word. After that we have Yunus. And we have Hud. We have Yusuf. We have Ar-Ra'd. We have Ibrahim. We have Al-Hijr, Al-Nahl, Al-Isra, Al-Kahf, Maryam, Taha. So far, if I'm not mistaken, Wallahu A'lam, all of the surah, the word has come in the surah. Maybe Surah Tawbah, you can say it's not so clear, but it does come once in the surah. But here, the word Anbiya doesn't come in Surah Al-Anbiya at all. But what is mentioned is the Anbiya, and this is the ayah it comes back to here. وَأَنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. These people, this community is your community, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This is who you belong to. You belong to the community of Nuh, and the community of Ibrahim, and the community of Dawood and Sulaiman and Musa and Ayyub and Zakariya and Yunus and Isa alayhim as-salatu was-salam. These are your people. And your religion is one religion. And that is the religion of Islam. Sahih, the shara'i or the individual laws could differ among the prophets. Marriage, divorce, food, clothing, And there are differences between them in those things. In issues of how is the form of the prayer? All of them prayed. But is it, do you put your hands here, or is your prayer, how many raka'at is it, or does it have a ruku' or a sujood in it, in which way, and what? Or there can be differences. But the fundamental religion itself is one single religion, and that is At-Tawheed, the religion of the oneness of Allah Azza wa Jal, or Al-Hanifiyya, the religion of dedicating yourself to the worship of one God, and that is the religion of Islam and submission to Him.
وَتَقَطَّعُوا أَمْرَهُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ كُلٌّ إِلَيْنَا رَاجِعُونَ. And yet they divided their affair among themselves, but all to us will return.
In here, the people, the followers of those prophets, they are the ones who divided up the matter into groups. And they broke up into different groups. Now, I'm going to check. Also, the statement of Allah Azza wa Jalla, وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ فَاعْبُدُونَ, I am your Lord, so worship me. Again, that's a proof that the meaning of La ilaha illallah is the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal alone. Now, no doubt, the tafarruq here is not the Anbiya. The tafarruq is not the prophets who broke up. The followers of the prophets broke up into different groups. They are the ones who broke up into Jews and Christians and different sects within them, Orthodox and Protestant and Catholic, and all of these different groups that they broke into. They are the ones who broke into it. The prophets ﷺ called to one religion, which is the religion of Islam. These people after them, they are the ones who broke up into groups. And all of them will return to Allah, where He will judge between them.
فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِنَ الصَّالِحَاتِ وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَلَا كُفْرَانَ لِسَعْيِهِ وَإِنَّا لَهُ كَاتِبُونَ. So whoever does righteous deeds while he is a believer, no denial will there be for his effort, and indeed we of it are recorders.
Now here is a proof, by the way, for those people who feel they are troubled by the idea of qadr, by believing in qadr, and they feel like, but how, if I'm making efforts, how do I not know that I'm from the people of the fire? This is a promise from Allah Azza wa Jal. If you do good deeds as a believer, so you join between iman and righteous deeds, Allah will never ever deny the good that you've done. And He will never reject or deprive you. That would be a good word, a better word. And you will never be deprived of the good that you've done. But that's a promise from Allah of His justice. Allah doesn't misguide people unjustly. If you're making an effort, Allah will never ever deprive you of the good that you have done.
وحرام على قرية أهلكناها أنهم لا يرجعون. And it's prohibited to the people of a city which we have destroyed that they will ever return.
Meaning that they will ever return in tawbah, or that they will ever return to this world after they have been destroyed.
حتى إذا فتحت يأجوج ومأجوج وهم من كل حدب ينسلون. Until when the dam of Ya'juj and Ma'juj has been opened and they from every elevation descend.
And that is mentioned in which surah?
Kahf.
Surah Al-Kahf. When the dam is broken, the radam that was made by Dhul Qarnayn, when it is broken, and they will come down from every elevation. Here, there is no doubt that the ayah refers to Ya'juj and Ma'juj, whereas in Surah Al-Kahf, there's ikhtilaf about the ayah. وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. Does it refer to Yawm al-Qiyamah, or does it refer to the breaking of Ya'juj and Ma'juj? We said that, right? So Ya'juj and Ma'juj, yes, the dam, that's about them. Like in the next ayah in Surah Al-Kahf, وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. there's a difference of opinion. Does the ayah refer to Ya'juj and Ma'juj like this ayah, in which case this ayah is an explanation of the ayah in Surah Al-Kahf? Or does it refer to Yawm al-Qiyamah, the people crushing each other and climbing over each other, Yawm al-Qiyamah? That ayah in Surah Al-Kahf could be either of the two, but here there is no doubt that they will descend from and they'll swoop down from every hill, from every mound, from every place, every elevated place. They will swoop down in a huge, vast number, and no one on the earth will be able to fight against them. Hatta even the believers, they will not fight them. If you want to know how severe the issue of Ya'juj and Ma'juj is, that the Prophet of Allah, Isa, alayhi salatu wasalam, will not fight them. Rather, he will take the believers to an elevated place. I think if it's not mistaken, it's at Tur, we'll go back to it, we'll check it. And he will make dua to Allah for Allah Azza wa Jal to save them from Ya'juj and Ma'juj. And then Allah Azza wa Jal will destroy Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Allah will destroy them. Otherwise, nobody can stand in their way. Hatta the believers will not fight them. The believers will go to a place where Isa will take them, and they will make dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will destroy Ya'juj and Ma'juj. And then Allah will send down a rain that will wash away the earth. The Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Allah Azza wa Jal will send that which will dispose of their bodies from the birds and so on. And then Allah Azza wa Jal will send a rain that will clean the earth, and the earth will return to how it was in the time of Adam. Because we are the ones who corrupted the earth, right? That's the truth. ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر ما كسبت أيدي الناس. Your own hands, our hands, we ruined the earth from our sins, our disobedience. The earth will return back to how it was at the time of Adam, in terms of its barakah and its greenery and its beauty. Will go back to how it was in the time of Adam.
واقترب الوعد الحق فإذا هي شاخصة أبصار الذين كفروا يا ويلنا قد كنا في غفلة من هذا بل كنا ظالمين. And when the true promise has approached, then suddenly the eyes of those who disbelieve will be staring in horror while they say, "Oh, woe to us, we had been unmindful of this, rather we were wrongdoers."
This shows that Ya'juj and Ma'juj coming will be one of the last things that happens before the Qiyamah. The Qiyamah will be very close. And that's true of all the 10, the Ashrat, As-Sa'a Al-Kubra, the 10 major signs, the Dajjal, and the descent of Isa ibn Maryam, and the rising of the sun from the west, and the smoke, and the chasms that will open in the earth, one in the east and one in the west, and one in the Arabian Peninsula, and the fire that will bring the people from their final to their final place in Sham. And the others, what we mentioned, the 10 major signs, Ya'juj and Ma'juj follow on from that. They're not included in it. They're not one of the 10 specifically, they are a part of that. That when these signs start, and what's the first one of them? What's the first of the 10 major signs? No, the sun is not the first one. If the sun is the first one, we're all done for, man. Because the sun, after that, there is no Islam. You cannot accept Islam after that. And if you didn't have Islam before it comes, you cannot be a Muslim after that. You can't change, you can't revert, you can't accept Islam. Once the sun rose from the west, the list of people who accepted Islam is finished. That's it. You are Muslim or you're not.
Is that buildings? Or is that
No, that's from the minor signs.
Okay.
The Dajjal. The Masih al-Dajjal is the first one.
Oh.
The Masih al-Dajjal is the first of the 10. Once that starts, the 10 follow each other in quick succession. What's the last of them? The sun is not the last of them. The last of them is the fire that will start in Yemen, and it will drive the people towards Asham, towards the Levant, where the final death will be at the time of the judgment. For the last of them is the fire. We know the first of them and we know the last of them. But we don't know, we also know after the Dajjal immediately will come Isa. So we know sign number 1 and sign number 2 and sign number 10 in order. And we know what is sign number 1 and we know what is sign number 2. And we know what is sign number 10. The other signs, we know them, but we don't know the order that they come in. The beast that will come out of the earth. So this is, we don't know the order that they will come in. Why is Ya'juj and Ma'juj not one of the 10? That's a very interesting question. I think there's an answer. What's a feature of these 10 that you can know them by? What makes them from the 10? What makes them from the 10? So the first thing we mentioned is that they all come close together at the end of time. But there's one more thing that makes them from the 10.
That they're all like a big...
Yeah, they're big supernatural signs. They are khawariq al-'ada. They are not from the norms of the universe. Like Ya'juj and Ma'juj are human beings at the end of the day. They are human beings. There are a lot of them and they ruin the earth and nobody can fight against them. But they're still human beings. For the 10 signs are all khawariq al-'ada. All of them are things that are not normal within the norms of the universe. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best.
إنكم وما تعبدون من دون الله حصب جهنم أنتم لها واردون. Indeed, you disbelievers and what you worship other than Allah are the firewood of hell. You will be coming to enter it.
Now, the firewood of hell. يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة. This fire is not like any other fire. The fire of this world is fueled by fuel, oil, or whatever it is, petrol, wood. And it's fueled by the fuels that we know of this world, right? The things that burn, the flammable materials that burn. What is Jahannam fueled by? It's fueled by people. And it's fueled by stones. The stones are the fuel of Jahannam. You can't imagine it. And the fire is 70 times hotter than the fire of this world.
لو كان هؤلاء آلهة ما وردوها وكل فيها خالدون. Had these false deities been actual gods, they would not have come to it, but all are eternal therein.
Ya'juj and Ma'juj, did we say it's not from the 10? Like Ya'juj and Ma'juj comes in the 10, صح? Ya'juj and Ma'juj comes in the 10. We said it follows them, but it doesn't follow them. ما يدخل. Because you have the 10 is the Dajjal and Isa and Ya'juj and Ma'juj. So I said it's not from the 10, like it is from the 10. Like in Sahih, the 10 are khawariq al-'ada. We strike that statement, it comes from the 10.
Somebody was asking the trumpet.
Now the trumpet doesn't come from the 10. The 10 is the Dajjal and Isa and Ya'juj and Ma'juj and the beast that comes out of the earth and the smoke, the sun rising from the west, the 3 chasms that open in the earth and the fire. So Ya'juj and Ma'juj comes in the 10. You have to correct me sometimes when I go off on a tangent like that. If I came in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm saying Ya'juj and Ma'juj doesn't come in the 10, like Ya'juj and Ma'juj does come in the 10. يدخل فيها. It has to be from خوارق العادة then. We said it's not from خوارق العادة, but it has to be. Because all of the 10 are not normal. Like, they are from Bani Adam, there's no doubt. That's correct. They are tribe from Bani Adam. Like, it comes in the 10.
لهم فيها زفير وهم فيها لا يسمعون. For them therein is heavy sighing, and they therein will not hear.
No.
إن الذين
From the ayah before that, if their false gods had been actual gods, they would never ever have been in hell. Right? If the false gods you worshipped were gods, they would not have gone to Jahannam. Now, carry on.
إن الذين سبقت لهم منا الحسنى أولئك عنها مبعدون. Indeed, those for whom the best reward has proceeded from us, they are far from it removed.
In here, you have to really think about this word sabaqat. Sabaqat. In sabaqat here, what does it mean? It's already been destined for you. Those that we had already written paradise for them before they were born. It's very scary, wallahi, to think about it. Kitabun marqum. It is a book that has been written and finished. There is nobody's name is going to be added to the list. Inna alladhina sabaqat lahum. Their names had already been written before they were born, that they would be from the people of paradise. But bear in mind, as we said, فَلَا كُفْرَانَ لِسَعِيهِ, the one who works hard and is sincere, he's from those people, بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. It's very scary, and it's there to make you scared. It's there to make you scared, no doubt. Those people whose names are already written, have already been written, that they will be from the people of paradise, those people will be kept far away from Jahannam.
لا يسمعون حسيسها وهم فيما اشتهت أنفسهم خالدون. They will not hear its sound while they are in that which their souls desire, abiding eternally.
They will not hear even the slightest sound of Jahannam, not even the smallest sound, not even the slightest sound. Because when you're in Jannah, you will not hear the slightest sound of the people of the fire. I can hear there are other ayat where the people of the fire talk to them. This is a limited situation, right? So there are, remember, the qiyamah is mawaqif, there are phases. Once Jannah is, once the people are settled in Jannah eternally, and the people in the fire are burning eternally, after that there is no اخسأوا فيها ولا تكلمون. Stay in it and don't speak to anybody. Like in the beginning, as the people are going, and then there is a conversation between the people of the fire and the people of Jannah. People of Jannah go to take the people out from those people that Allah wills to be taken out from the fire. So that happens at a phase. That's why people get confused, because the qiyamah is mawaqif. The qiyamah is mawaqif, right? It is phases, stages. So when you understand that, you understand why it is that at certain stages, the people of the fire speak to the people of Jannah. Like, the point is, once everything is done, and the ram is slaughtered, death is brought in the form of a ram and slaughtered between Jannah and Jahannam. Death is brought in the form of a ram and slaughtered between Jannah and Jahannam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya Ahl al-Jannah, khuludun bila maut. O people of Jannah, stay there in forever and you'll never die. Wa ya Ahl al-Nar, khuludun bila maut. And O people of the fire, you will live in it forever and you will never die. Once the matter is settled, they will not hear or think about the people of Jahannam.
لا يحزنهم الفزع الأكبر وتتلقاهم الملائكة هذا يومكم الذي كنتم توعدون. They will not be grieved by the greatest terror, and the angels will meet them saying, this is your day which you have been promised.
Here, there's a point I wanted to make about إِنَّ الَّذِينَ سَبَقَتْ لَهُم مِّنَّا الْحُسْنَى. A person might say, why should I work? If Allah tells us kitabun marqum, and it's already written, your name is written down, is not going to move from one book to the other. Why should I do good deeds? For there's an answer, there are many answers. Like there's an answer that I think gives a lot of people, it settles their heart. The answer is, and it might, I don't know if this would make sense to people, but the answer is, what other option do you have? Sahih, kitabun marqum, your name is written already. Your name and my name is written in one of two places. Wallahi, no one's name will be erased and moved to the other one. Kitabun marqum. The names have been written and sealed and inscribed and finished. Like, ultimately, let me ask you the question. You have between you two choices. Either you work hard or either you do nothing. If you do nothing, which of the two will you be? No doubt from the people of Jahannam. Yani, qat'an. There's no other view. And you stop praying, you stop believing, you stop, and you just sit down and say, I'm done, whatever is going to happen to me. For in this case, you are 100% guaranteed that there's only one place you're going to. Tayyib, if you work hard, sahih, there is a possibility that work will not be sincere. There is a possibility that the end will not be a good end. Wal-'iyadhu billah. But you give yourself and you do the best that you can with the circumstances you have. For why would you not work? Why would you not work and try to be from those people who Allah Azza wa Jal said, فَلَا كُفْرَانَ لِسَعِيٍ. Never ever will his hard work be denied. For ultimately, you don't know where your name is written, but you do know one thing. You know the description of the people of Jannah in this dunya. You don't know where your name is written, but you do know what the people of Jannah do in this dunya. They pray and they make dua and they're sincere and they fear Allah and all of the things that I mentioned. For all you have in front of you is to try to be like them and to beg Allah Azza wa Jal to help you. Otherwise, if you sat down and said, I'm not going to work, for all you are doing is fulfilling the fate that is written for you. And all you're doing is just sealing your fate in Jahannam. So you don't know whether your name has been written from the people of Jannah or the people of Jahannam. But you do know what the people of Jannah do in this world. That you know for sure. And that you can try to emulate. You can try to be like them. And you beg Allah and you ask Allah for His guidance and you work hard because that is what you have the ability to do. And you're scared. Of course you're scared because you don't know where your name is written. Of course you're scared and you don't know. Like, all you can do is to work hard. For that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, everyone will be made easy what he was created for. And you can't change what Allah wrote for you, whether to be from the people of eternal happiness or a person of eternal damnation. You cannot choose that. Like, all you can do is work hard and to emulate the actions of the people of Jannah and to ask Allah to make you from them. But you are certain if you don't do that, then there's no doubt about where you're going. And if you turn away from the salah, if you turn away from Islam, if you turn away from practicing the religion, for then there is no doubt. Yani there is no second opinion about it. And there is no option. So would you not at least give yourself an opportunity to try to work hard and to ask Allah's help? That's one way of thinking about it. Like, it's a very scary concept. عفوا عبد الرحمن أعيد الآية. لا يحزنهم
الفزع الأكبر وتتلقاهم الملائكة هذا يومكم الذي كنتم توعدون. They will not be grieved by the greatest terror, and the angels will meet them saying, this is your day which you have been promised.
in the people of Jannah, they will not be grieved by the great terror on that day. And this is from the ayat of Raja. It gives you hope that that horrible terror that will happen on that day, it will not affect those people. And the angels will meet them saying, this is the day that you are promised. However, in here, there is again, you have to think of the Qiyamah as phases. Because at the end of the day, there are things that affect everybody, like waiting for the judgment, like the fact that people will be resurrected, any naked and barefooted and uncircumcised. And there are things that affect everybody. But the terror of that day that the disbelievers face, and those people will not face it. They will not feel that terror that they face. Like, and it does not mean that the Qiyamah will be easy. And if the prophets say nafsi, nafsi, this is the fear and hope. That's my point. That if you look at it from one angle, the prophets are saying, I'm scared for myself today. And on the other angle, those who believe will not be scared of the terror of that day. For you see that there is fear and hope always. You're scared and you're hopeful.
يوم نطوي السماء كطي السجل للكتب كما بدأنا أول خلق نعيده وعدا علينا إنا كنا فاعلين. The day when we will fold the heaven like the folding of a written sheet for the records. As we began the first creation, we will repeat it. That is a promise binding upon us. Indeed, we'll do it.
And the heavens will be folded up, just like a piece of parchment is folded up to be kept in the record. And you're rolled up. I think rather than folded up, I think rolled up is better. It will be rolled up like a piece of parchment is rolled up. It needs to be written upon.
وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. And we've already written in the book for
Psalms.
Psalms. After the previous mention that the land of paradise is inherited by my righteous servants.
So here there are two views in the tafsir of the ayah. When I say two views, I'm not limiting it to two views. I'm just saying that there are two views I'm going to talk to you about. One is that the Zabur here is the Zabur of Dawood. وَآتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ زَبُورًا. One view is that it's the Zabur of Dawood. In which case, min ba'di dhikri means min ba'di Tawrah. And we certainly wrote in the Zabur, after having given the Torah, that the land is inherited by my righteous servants. Yani the land of paradise. This is one view, that it refers to the Psalms of Dawood. And from the things that could be mentioned in this is that if you actually look at the Psalms themselves, there is actually a verse that says, the righteous shall inherit the land. That's not an evidence because the Nasara move things around wherever they want. Like just as a fa'idah, actually in the Psalms themselves are the words that the righteous shall inherit the land. Like there's another view that the word Zabur is also a word for every scripture, because the word Zabur means the scripture. So the Zabur of Dawood is a specific scripture, but the Zabur itself means the scripture, meaning that we wrote in every scripture. So then what does it mean min ba'di dhikr? In min ba'di dhikr here, after it was written in the Lawh al-Mahfuz. after it was written in the Lawh al-Mahfuz. And that's why Muhsin Khan takes the second view. We have already written in all of the scripture after it was written in the Lawh al-Mahfuz that the righteous servants will inherit the land of paradise. Or you say that the Zabur here is specific to Dawood. We have already written in the Zabur of Dawood after it was written in the Torah.
إن في هذا لبلاغا لقوم عابدين. Indeed, in this Qur'an is notification for a worshipping people.
Naam, a balag. Yani the message has reached you.
وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين. And we have not sent you, O Muhammad, except as a mercy to the worlds.
No. The Prophet ﷺ was sent as a rahmah to the entire worlds, yani the entire, if you like, the whole world, yani the universe. The Prophet ﷺ was a rahmah. Salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. He's Nabi al-Rahmah, the Prophet of mercy, sent as a mercy to all of the worlds. I read to you what As-Sa'di said about it. Rahimahullah ta'ala. He said, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And he is Allah's rahmah that was gifted to his servants. So the believers accepted this rahmah and were grateful for it. And they appreciated it. And others disbelieved in it. And they replaced the blessing of Allah with disbelief. And they refused the mercy of Allah and his blessings. For the Prophet ﷺ was sent as a rahmah. And that shows that every single one of the rulings of Islam, it is a rahmah. Even the punishments, even the rulings regarding fighting, all of it is a rahmah. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا. We only sent you as a rahmah to the worlds.
قل إنما يوحى إلي أنما إلهكم إله واحد فهل أنتم مسلمون. Say, it is only revealed to me that your God is but one God. So will you be Muslims in submission to him?
No.
فإن تولوا فقل آذنتكم على سواء وإن أدري أقريب أم بعيد ما توعدون. But if they turn away, then say, I have announced to all of you equally, and I know not whether near or far is that which you are promised.
I have announced the coming of the punishment to all of you. I have not concealed it from anyone. All of you know that the punishment is coming, and I have not concealed it from anybody. Muhsin Khan brings it as a notice of war. In the Zahir here is that it refers to the punishment in general. I have given you an announcement. All of you know what is coming.
إنه يعلم الجهر من القول ويعلم ما تكتمون. Indeed, he knows what is declared of speech and he knows what you conceal.
Yeah.
وإن أدري لعله فتنة لكم ومتاع إلى حين. And I know not, perhaps it is a trial for you and enjoyment for a time.
Now, the delaying of the punishment is what is referred to here. I don't know whether this delay in a punishment is a trial for you. I don't know. Perhaps it is going to make things worse for you. Istidraj, that the punishment will come upon you. I don't know. I don't know whether this delay in punishment, perhaps it is that Allah Azza wa Jal is going to make your situation worse and He punish you more severely. Like istidraj, and He give you the dunya and then take it away from you suddenly. A trial for you. I don't think a test. I think the word a test is wrong for the reason that, and the clear Qur'an says a test. I think for the reason that it's certainly a test. And there's no doubt that it's a test. There's no doubt whatsoever that everything is a test. Everything good. وَنَبْلُوكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ fitna. And everything is a test. Like in here, the fitna is an increase in punishment. I don't know whether Allah Azza wa Jal has delayed your punishment because He wants to punish you more severely. Yeah? And whether you're only enjoying for a while before the punishment comes upon you, like it did upon the people of Hud and Salih and so on.
قال رب احكم بالحق وربنا الرحمن المستعان على ما تصفون. The Prophet ﷺ has said, "My Lord, judge between us in truth, and our Lord is the most merciful, the one whose help is sought against that which you describe."
And He separate between the believer and the disbeliever. And this dua was accepted in the battle of Badr and elsewhere, where Allah Azza wa Jal made clear those upon the truth and those upon falsehood. And Allah Azza wa Jal continued to answer that dua of the Prophet ﷺ all the way through the battles that took place in Fath Makkah, the conquest of Makkah, that Allah Azza wa Jal made clear in judgment who was upon right and who was upon error. وَرَبُّنَا الرَّحْمَنُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ. Al-Musta'an is the one whose help is sought. The one whose help is sought. Al-Musta'an is the one whose help is sought. عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. And against that which you falsely attribute to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yani tasifun, that which you describe Allah with that He doesn't deserve. And the sifat that you give Him that He does not, that are not appropriate for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. With that, we finish Surah Al-Anbiya, and we'll start Surah Al-Hajj, inshallah ta'ala. In Surah Al-Hajj, it said that it was revealed in Makkah, and it said it was revealed in Medina. Sa'di doesn't prefer one of them over the other. And although it seems like he just says, قِيلَ مَكِّيَّ وَقِيلَ مَدَنِيَّ. It said that it was revealed in Makkah, and it said it was revealed in Medina. What I'll do is I'll bring you some of the statements of the scholars about it. I'll highlight it. And I'll bring you some of the statements of the scholars about it now.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم إن زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم. O mankind, fear your Lord. Indeed, the convulsion of the final hour is a terrible thing.
نعم.
يوم ترونها تذهل كل مرضعة عما أرضعت وتضع كل ذات حمل حملها وترى الناس سكارى وما هم بسكارى ولكن عذاب الله شديد. On the day you see it, every nursing mother will be distracted from that child she was nursing, and every pregnant woman will abort her pregnancy, and you will see the people appearing intoxicated while they are not intoxicated, but the punishment of Allah is severe.
And this tells us about the coming of the hour, and what will happen when the horn is blown, or at the time when the Qiyamah comes upon the people. It is, the shaking is something which is terrible. The violent quaking, the violent earthquake. It is so bad that a nursing mother, a mother who is breastfeeding, she's feeding her infant, she will drop her infant, cast her infant aside. And the pregnant woman will miscarry her baby. And she will go into labor and deliver the baby straight away. She'll miscarry the baby. And you will see the people as though they are drunk, but they're not drunk. Rather, the torment of Allah and the punishment of Allah is extremely severe.
ومن الناس من يجادل في الله بغير علم ويتبع كل شيطان مريد. And of the people is he who disputes about Allah without knowledge and follows every rebellious devil.
And despite that, despite the severity of the hour and what you know will come, there are some people who argue about Allah without knowledge. And this is from the major sins. And it's a part of speaking about Allah without knowledge. And that is people debating and arguing about things that they have no knowledge of. Just a moment. They argue with falsehood in order to remove the truth. The reality is they are in the utmost state of ignorance. They have no knowledge about what they are arguing about, but all they have is to repeat the statements of the leaders of misguidance from every shaitan, every stubborn shaitan, every rebellious shaitan. So that's all they have, is they've followed every rebellious shaitan and they argue about Allah Azza wa Jal without knowledge.
كتب عليه أنه من تولاه فأنه يضله ويهديه إلى عذاب السعير. It has been decreed for him that whoever turns to him, he will misguide him and will lead him to the punishment of the blaze.
And it's been decreed for that obstinate shaitan that whoever turns to him or whoever takes him as a guide will be misguided and be led into the punishment of the blaze.
يا أيها الناس إن كنتم في ريب من البعث فإنا خلقناكم من تراب ثم من نطفة ثم من علقة ثم من مضغة مخلقة وغير مخلقة لنبين لكم ونقر في الأرحام ما نشاء إلى أجل مسمى ثم نخرجكم طفلا ثم لتبلغوا أشدكم ومنكم من يتوفى ومنكم من يرد إلى أرذل العمر لكي لا يعلم من بعد علم شيئا وترى الأرض هامدة فإذا أنزلنا عليها الماء اهتزت وربت وأنبتت من كل زوج بهيج. O people, if you should be in doubt about the resurrection, then consider that indeed we created you from dust, then from a sperm drop, then from a clinging clot, and then from a lump of flesh formed and unformed, that we may show you, and we settle in the wombs whom we will for a specified term, where then we will bring you out as a child, and then we develop you that you may reach your time of maturity, and among you is he who is taken in early death, and among who is he who is returned to the most decrepit. Old age, so that he knows, after once having knowledge, nothing. And you see the earth barren, but when we send down upon it rain, it quivers and swells and grows something of every beautiful kind.
This ayah contains many, many proofs for the resurrection. If you're in doubt about the resurrection, then take the following. First of all, that Allah Azza wa Jal created you from dust. Then from a sperm drop. Who did He create from dust? Who did He create from dust? Adam. And He didn't create you and me from dust. He created you from Adam. And the nutfa is either a sperm drop or it's the mix of discharge from the male and the female. And some of them held that view that the nutfa, it refers to the mix of discharge. Yani the genes of the mother and the father. And who was created like that? Everyone after Adam. From Adam's children onwards. So here the first one is Adam and then Adam's children, Adam's offspring. Then from a clinging clot, yani that mix of discharge turns into a clinging clot. Yani alaqa, and it's something that is mu'allaq. It's clinging on. And it clings on to the side of the womb. Then from a lump of flesh, a mudghah, is something that is like a chewed lump. Something that resembles a chewed lump. That is the early embryo. Formed and unformed. Formed, yani it takes the full form of a baby. And unformed, the miscarriage happens or abortion happens before the baby has the form of a human being. And the general refer here is miscarriage, but like it could be applied to abortion as well. But miscarriage is what is referred. Yani the baby that is miscarried before it has human features. So that we may make clear to you the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one who not only does Allah Azza wa Jal describe that He created you the first time, He created you from dust, so you can have no doubt about His ability to recreate you from dust. When your bones become dust, the first time Adam was created from dust. So when your bones become dust, it's not difficult. Then after that, Allah brought you out through this process. First of all, you were just a drop. That's all you were. You were not like you are. Look at you now. You are this huge human being. You have these features and these limbs and this intellect, and like you started your life as a drop of liquid. And from that drop, Allah Azza wa Jal brought it through all the phases of creation until Allah Azza wa Jal took it out as a child. And then Allah Azza wa Jal developed that child until it reached the age of maturity. And you see a little tiny baby is born. This tiny little baby is born. It doesn't know anything. It can't talk to you. It can't reason. It's just a tiny baby. And then Allah Azza wa Jal takes you all the way to the age of maturity. And then from that are those who are taken in death early and those who live until they reach the age where they become back to a child again. They lose their memory, they lose their knowledge, and they behave again like a child. This itself it shows the complete power of Allah Azza wa Jal over a human being. And the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who is able to resurrect you, the one who is able to do all of that, who is able to take a single drop and bring from it a human being in the height of their power and maturity, and then able to turn that human being again into something that resembles a baby once again, or to cause some of them to die. And then Allah Azza wa Jal gives another example if you doubt the resurrection. Do you not see the earth barren? Do you not see the earth is dead? And when the rain falls down, the plants grow out from it, from every type of pleasant plant, every beautiful kind of plant. So the one who does this is also a sign for you that Allah Azza wa Jal will resurrect the bodies. A rain will come down and those bodies will form again. Those bodies will form again the way that they were in their life. For all of this is from the clearest of evidences for the truth of the resurrection. And they're things you can see. The intended meaning is sahih, that the development of the fetus is something that they didn't know. That is, Allah told them and they didn't know it, yani, about what happens to the drop, and that the drop becomes, yani, hatta if you add it to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about ma'ul mar'ah, about the discharge of a woman, and those things, this ayah and the ayah in Surah Al-Mu'minun and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about ma'ul mar'ah, the discharge that a woman has, together it is a perfect description of how a baby is born. This is a miracle, and this deserves to be called, no doubt, it's a miracle. And in terms of the knowledge that is presented. And that's so you don't say that Muhammad Tim doesn't believe in any scientific miracles in the Qur'an. I believe in them when the tafseer agrees with them, of course we agree with them. Like in here, the description of the birth of the child, along with Surah Al-Mu'minun, how the flesh comes and the bones are developed. It's mentioned in Surah Al-Mu'minun, how the bones grow and how the flesh is put over the baby. There's not something that would have been known in any way in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but what is it being used for here? Is it being used to prove the science? It's not. It's being used to prove the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who takes you from that drop. How does that drop end up being a 6 foot human being with ideas and views and speech and actions and movements? And how do you go from a drop to that? Is that not the one who is able to resurrect you? And then it's not just the power of Allah here that's indicated, it's also the knowledge of Allah. The knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah Azza wa Jal knows every single thing about those phases. How is it when it's at alaqa, when it's attached to the womb? How is it when it grows into a lump of flesh, and how long does it take? How is it when it takes the form of a human being? How is it when it's born? How does it develop as a child? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows all of it. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you see that child born, a tiny little child. And in a few years, that child is a big child. And then you see an adult. For all of that, is from the signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can see it with your eyes and it proves the resurrection. And the earth is another sign. You see a dead earth. Everything is dead. It is as dead as the people in the graves. Because the people in the graves will grow from what? What's the only thing that will not be destroyed from the body? Is the base of the spine, as is mentioned in the hadith. The only thing that is not destroyed from the body is the base of the spine. And this also, some of them mentioned a scientific miracle in it, and that is the place of some kind of all this, that the stem cells and all that type of stuff. And that is not Allahu Alam, I don't know about it. But people mention it. But what we do know is the Prophet ﷺ told that you'll be resurrected from the base of your spine. So the seed of the plant is dead. The roots are dead, the leaves are dead, the plant is finished. From that seed, the seed breaks open and you see the plant grow into a huge tree or a huge plant, and you see it die again and you see it grow again. So the one who causes all of that is able to resurrect you Yawm al-Qiyamah.
ذلك بأن الله هو الحق وأنه يحيي الموتى وأنه على كل شيء قدير. That is because Allah is the true reality, and because He gives life to the dead, and because He is able to do all things.
Now here, Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala mentions something beneficial. He said, the one who brought the human being into existence in the way described and brings the earth to life is Allah, the one who is the truth, meaning the one who is worshipped in truth. And from this is an indication that your purpose in this life is to worship Allah Azza wa Jal alone and not to make any partner with Him. And that Allah, as He brought people to life, He also causes people to die, and He is able to do all things.
وأن الساعة آتية لا ريب فيها وأن الله يبعث من في القبور. And that they may know that the hour is coming, no doubt about it, and that Allah will resurrect those in the graves.
نعم.
ومن الناس من يجادل في الله بغير علم ولا هدى ولا كتاب منير. And of the people is he who disputes about Allah without knowledge or guidance or an enlightening book from Him.
نعم, the people who argue and dispute with regard to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, any those who disputed with the Prophets alayhim salatu wasalam, they have neither do they have knowledge, nor do they have guidance, nor do they have scripture and to enlighten them. And here, As-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, the mujadala, the argumentation that happens, and this is the argumentation of with the shaitan, who is marid, the stubborn shaitan. And he said, ad-da'i ila al-bid'ah, the one who calls to innovation is like that. And they argue about Allah Azza wa Jal. And they argue with the prophets and the followers of the prophets in falsehood, without knowledge, and without following the guidance of a prophet or prophethood, and without scripture. So neither Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cancels out for them three things. Neither do they have knowledge in themselves, nor are they following a person of knowledge, any a prophet, nor do they have scripture. And yet they argue about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
ثاني عطفه ليضل عن سبيل الله له في الدنيا خزي ونذيقه يوم القيامة عذاب الحريق. Twisting his neck in arrogance to mislead people from the way of Allah, for him in the world is disgrace, and we will make him taste on the day of resurrection the punishment of the burning fire, while it is said.
And in twisting his neck in arrogance, this is a sign that he hates the people of truth, and that he is happy with the knowledge that he has, which is not beneficial knowledge. This person will be disgraced in this world, and they will be given the punishment in the hereafter.
ذلك بما قدمت يداك وأن الله ليس بظلام للعبيد. That is for what your hands have put forth, and because Allah is not ever unjust to His servants. ومن الناس من يعبد الله على حرف فإن أصابه خير اطمأن به وإن أصابته فتنة انقلب على وجهه خسر الدنيا والآخرة ذلك هو الخسران المبين. And of the people is he who worships Allah on an edge. If he is touched by good, he is reassured by it. But if he is struck by trial, he turns on his face to unbelief. He has lost this world and the hereafter. That is what is the manifest loss.
And here, those who are on the edge of faith, this person is uncertain about their faith. They're uncertain about Islam and Iman, or they have hypocrisy, or they are from those people who are weak in their commitment to Islam. Those people, what happens to them? If they're touched by good, they lean on the side of Islam. If something good happens to them, they say, yeah, I'm a Muslim, and I believe in Islam, and I believe in Allah, and I worship Him. Islam must be true. But if something bad happens to them, they turn back to kufr. They turn back to disbelief. And this person will lose this world and the hereafter. But my dear brothers and sisters, one of the things that you can see from this is that this is the behavior of many, many people, even if they don't reach the level of disbelief, is that many, many people fall into what is mentioned in this ayah. That when things are going well for them, they are committed to their religion. They pray because they see their dua being answered. When their dua is answered, they come, they pray, they do the commitments, the rules of Islam, they follow it. Like in the first time something bad happens to them, they turn away and they stop praying. They become angry with Allah. They say, they say, Rabbi ahanan, my Lord has disgraced me. My Lord doesn't want to give me anything good. The believer is not like this. The believer, their commitment to Islam is whether things are good or whether things are bad. And their belief in Islam doesn't waver because something bad happened to them. Now, sahih, a new Muslim could be like this and they're not a munafiq. And that person just needs time for iman to enter their heart. Sahih, a new Muslim could be like that. And sometimes when a person becomes Muslim at the beginning, and this is the virtue, by the way, of the Sahaba, that they were not like this, but often some of the Muslims, when they become Muslim in the beginning, they become Muslim on the idea that good things will happen to them in the dunya. And that's a big mistake from the du'at as well. When you give people da'wah, and you give them da'wah on the basis that if you accept Islam today, goodness will happen to you in the dunya. Like you attach their heart to that. Sahih, it's true. You can say that to them as part of the whole, Allah will give you Jannah, and inshallah Allah will give you goodness in the dunya. Like when you say to someone, you focus their heart upon the dunya. They accept Islam today, and you won't have debt tomorrow. You won't be in debt tomorrow, or you won't have this problem with your family tomorrow. The problem is that person, when they start like that, they are dependent upon it. And their heart is only upon that. So if something happens, like their debt increases or their problems increase, they just leave Islam and walk away. But the sad thing is that, those new Muslims, you can make an excuse in the sense that Islam Iman hasn't settled yet in their heart, any firmness of faith in their heart. They've accepted Islam as a general acceptance, but they haven't yet. وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. Your heart hasn't yet taken on board Iman. But for a Muslim who is established in Islam to be like that is a terrible thing. For you to be someone who your religious commitment is dependent upon Allah Azza wa Jal giving you good. And this is أشبه بالمنافقين. It's closer in resemblance to the munafiq. That your commitment is when Allah gives you good. Now that doesn't mean that people don't feel good when Allah has given you good or answered your dua. You get what's the expression? Wind in your sails. You feel a bit of energy. Alhamdulillah, Allah answered my dua. You feel gratitude. But to be someone who doesn't practice your religion unless things are going well for you, that is what is meant in the ayah. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best.
يدعو من دون الله ما لا يضره وما لا ينفعه ذلك هو الضلال البعيد يدعو من دون الله ما لا يضره وما لا ينفعه ذلك هو الضلال البعيد. He invokes instead of Allah that which neither harms him nor benefits him. That is what is the extreme error.
Yeah. And who is it who invokes besides Allah that doesn't benefit him? The one who turned away from his religion, the one who left Islam. And that also shows that people leave Islam. The ayah previously shows people leave Islam. And there's also many ayat of the Qur'an that talk about riddah, leaving Islam and turning your back on Islam. Either by way of what it happened or by way of warning the Sahaba that don't be like those people who turn their backs on Islam. For there are, as much as any we like to talk about people who accept Islam, there's an exodus of people from Islam. No doubt. And this is part of the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah replaces one people with another. وَإِن تَتَوَلَّوْا يَسْتَبْدِلْ. If you turn away, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace you قَوْمًا غَيْرَكُمْ, a people that are not you. Allah will replace a people. Then they will not be ثُمَّ لَمْ يَكُونُوا أَمْثَالَكُمْ. They will not be like you after that. If you turn away, Allah replaces you with people. For there's people, you cannot, the person who works in da'wah, when I say da'wah, I mean, dealing with non-Muslims and new Muslims and, dealing with those kind of issues and calling people to Islam, wallah, you see an exodus of people from Islam. No doubt about it. For what is that person going to? Khas, you left Islam now, you turned your back on it. You had apostasy. You chose to go back to the way of the kuffar. What are you calling upon? You're calling upon the one, you're making dua, again making dua is mentioned, to the one that neither harms you nor benefits you. This is the extreme error.
يدعو لمن ضره أقرب من نفعه لبئس المولى ولبئس العشير. He invokes one whose harm is closer than his benefit. How wretched the protector and how wretched the associate.
Now here, in the beginning, the person calls upon, and Allah tells us they call upon someone that doesn't harm and doesn't benefit. Like, in worse than that, actually, it's not just that they don't harm and don't benefit. Because if they don't harm and don't benefit, you could also say, well, like it didn't harm the person, it didn't neither harm them nor did it benefit them. Like, in the reality is, it did harm them as well. Not only did it not harm, there's no harm or benefit from them, but the end result for the person was that it harmed them. And how terrible is the one that was taken as a protector, and how terrible is this evil associate.
إن الله يدخل الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار إن الله يفعل ما يريد. Indeed, Allah will admit those who believe and do righteous deeds to gardens beneath which rivers flow. Indeed, Allah does what He intends.
And I think intends here, I don't also like it. I really feel the word yurid should be translated as wants and not wills, because you've got to keep consistency in terminology. That's my problem. And if you say wills, people can't tell the difference between sha'a and arada. And then that leads to confusion in aqeedah and other issues. So I personally would say 100% that if you have a word in the Qur'an which has a particular terminology and it's a term that has a particular meaning, you have to be consistent how you translate that meaning. So I think wants, Allah does what He wants. And does that mean what He loves or what He wills here? Originally it means what He wills. Like, Allah loves to admit those people who do righteous deeds to Jannah. So both of them apply here. But what Allah wills, Allah does what He wills. But it's better to leave it as wants, so that you can be consistent with that terminology all the time it comes in the Qur'an. You can translate it the same way and people can get used to it. That the word arada, yuridu, it either means, sometimes it means sha'a, yasha'u, and sometimes it means ahabba, yuhibbu.
ما كان يظن أن لن ينصره الله في الدنيا والآخرة فليمدد بسبب إلى السماء السماء ثم ليقطع فلينظر هل يذهبن كيده ما يغيظ. Whoever should think that Allah will not support him in this world and the hereafter, let him extend a rope to the ceiling, then cut off his breath, and let him see, will his effort remove that which enrages him?
And he let him strangle himself, let him hang himself from the ceiling. That's the meaning of it. Let him tie a rope to the ceiling, put it around his neck, and let him hang himself. And then see, will his effort remove that which enrages him? And the reality is here, it means no matter what he does, no matter what they do, it will not make a difference. Neither will the rage in them go away, neither will it stop Allah Azza wa Jal helping the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this is given as a massive rebuke. And it's not telling them the permissibility of killing yourself. And here, we've already heard, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Don't kill yourselves. Like in here, there's a huge rebuke. In those people who think Allah will not help His Prophet ﷺ. In this world and the hereafter, tie a rope to the ceiling and hang yourself from it. It will not make any difference what you do. Rather, Allah Azza wa Jal will certainly help the Prophet ﷺ in this world and in the hereafter. In other words, will it remove what enrages him? What enrages him? What enrages him is the victory of the Prophet ﷺ. And let him see, what he does, will it remove the fact that Allah will help the Prophet ﷺ? Meaning it will never remove it. Whatever you do or you don't do, however extreme it is, you will not stop the Prophet ﷺ from being given victory. For this is a very profound kind of use of language. In other words, to bring the meaning that whatever you do, it will never ever make a difference to Allah helping the Prophet ﷺ. Allah will always help the Prophet ﷺ. In whatever you were to plan.
وكذلك أنزلناه آيات بينات وأن الله يهدي من يريد. And thus have we sent it down as verses of clear evidence, and because Allah guides whom He intends.
And who He wants.
Who He wants.
It's better. Allah guides who He wants. And here, because then you can talk about, does it mean wills or does it mean loves? Here both of them come, because guidance is something that Allah loves and guidance is something that Allah Azza wa Jal wills, like in who He wills now.
إن الذين آمنوا والذين هادوا والصابئين والنصارى والمجوس والذين أشركوا إن الله يفصل بينهم يوم القيامة إن الله على كل شيء شهيد. Indeed, those who have believed and those who were Jews and the Sabians and the Christians and the magicians and the Magians and those who associated with Allah, Allah will judge between them on the day of resurrection. Indeed, Allah is over all things witness.
The Sabians are a group of people who, the Sabi'in, they were based in Iraq, mostly. And they believe in a supreme being. And as for the Majus were mostly in Persia. And the Majus are those who they believed in dualism. And they believed in two gods, the God of light and the God of dark. So they believed in the God of light and the God of dark. And Allah Azza wa Jal will judge between them Yawm al-Qiyamah.
ألم تر أن الله يسجد له من في السماوات ومن في الأرض والشمس والقمر والنجوم والجبال والشجر والدواب وكثير حق عليه العذاب ومن يهن الله فما له من مكرم إن الله يفعل ما يشاء. Do you not see that to Allah prostrates whoever is in the heavens and whoever is on the earth and the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains, the trees, the moving creatures and many of the people? But upon many the punishment has been justified, and he whom Allah humiliates, for him there is no bestower of honor. Indeed, Allah does what He wills.
Also, it should be known about the Magians or the Magi. I wish I knew how to say this properly. There's another word they use. The clear Qur'an has a different word for it. I don't know if it's Magi or Mag. I think it's Magi or maybe who. I don't have any idea, to be honest. It says in the footnote of the clear Qur'an that the singular is Magus, and they're the Zoroastrians. Zoroastrians, we know that's true. The Majus are the Zoroastrians, the fire worshippers. They believe in a God of light and a God of dark, and they worship the fire. Like, and I have no idea how to pronounce their name in English properly. Majus is what their name is in Arabic. What I was looking for is the clear Qur'an has, again, I'm not really very happy with this footnote. I find it to be, again, an example of moving away from the literal meaning without having a reason for it. And that is when they came to, do you not see that to Allah bows down all those in the heaven and the earth? They put a footnote saying bows down means obeys. It doesn't mean bows down. That is, it's not really needed. Like, it's another example, wallahu alam, it's an example of unnecessarily going away from the meaning given in the Qur'an because you personally can't reconcile the meaning and you can't understand it. But other than that, why can you not say that all of those things make sujood? But they make sujood with a kayfiyah, بِكَيْفِيَّةٍ تَخُصُّهُمْ, in a way that suits their creation. So the mountain doesn't bend at the knees and put its forehead on the ground. The mountain has a sujood that is befitting to its creation, and the sun has a sujood that is befitting, and the moon has a sujood that is befitting, and the stars have a sujood that is befitting, and the trees have a sujood that is befitting to them, and the living beings have a sujood. Notice that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions them as all of them. The sun, the moon, all of the stars, all of the mountains, all of the trees. Like, when it comes to human beings, what does He say? Many of them. Because human beings are given a choice. As for the mountains and the stars, they have their sujood بِكَيْفِيَّةٍ تَخُصُّهُمْ, with a means of doing it that is specific to their creation. Like, I understand that they're trying to make it clear and saying that sujood here just means that they obey Allah. Like, that's, it seems to me that itself makes more problems than it solves. Because the ayah is an ayah sujood, ayah sujood tilawa. The reality is that the mountains make sujood in a way that is unique to their creation. Like, there's no need to say that sujood doesn't mean sujood here. Because this later on is a mushkil in terms of tafseer of the Qur'an. It becomes problematic later on. Because you start going to words and saying this word doesn't mean this and this word doesn't mean that. It seems to me, wallahu alam, and my personal feeling is, it would be better to have left it as sujood and then to have said that each one of them makes sujood in a way that is befitting to their creation, into how Allah Azza wa Jalla has created them. And they prostrate themselves to Allah in a way that is befitting to them. And that's both of the other two translations take that. They do it like that. And they mention prostrating. They don't try to explain it away. Because later on you're going to come to names and attributes of Allah and do the same thing. You're going to say it doesn't mean this, and this doesn't mean this, and this doesn't mean that. What is the reason why it doesn't mean that? Why? What is mumtani'? What's an impossibility that the mountain cannot make sujood? Why not? If we say that its sujood is in a way that is befitting to its creation. As an example, I'm not saying this is the tafsir. Let me give you a mithal, just as a just to explain what I mean. What if we said, and I'm not saying this, what if we said, the rocks that fall down from the mountains, when they fall down, the rocks that fall down, that's their sujood. And I'm not saying that, I'm just giving it as an example. What's to prevent that being the case? That the sajda of the mountain is that, for example, ala sabil mithal. Just as an example. The point is that each one has a sujood that is specific to it. But the sujood itself is to lower itself before Allah, right? That's what the sujood is. It is to lower itself before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the mountains lower themselves before Allah, the sun and moon lower themselves before Allah. The sun makes sajda under the arsh. The sun, the Prophet ﷺ said, every day the sun makes sajda to Allah below the arsh. Someone says, but my telescope doesn't see it. My satellites don't see it. This is from the ghaib. Where is the arsh that you see it in your telescope? You can't see the arsh in your telescope, so how can you see the sun making sajda before the arsh? It's from the umur al-ghaib. لا نعلم كيفيتها. For I believe the best of what you can say in this ayah is keep it as it is written and say, no one knows how that happens except Allah. In other words, to take it according to the apparent meaning of the ayah, and then to say that no one knows how that happens except Allah. Allah used the word sajda. If Allah wants to use the word obedience, He can use obedience. Allah can say, do you not see that everything obeys Allah in the heavens and the earth? And that's mentioned in other ayat. For the word sujood here, don't take that word from the Qur'an. That word came for a reason. Don't explain it away. Because at the end of the day, you'll do the same thing with the asma and sifat and everything else. Anything that doesn't match your aql, you're going to be like the Yahud. And everything that didn't match their hawa, you change it to something else. يحرفون الكلمة عن مواضعه. They distort the meanings with what it came. But I'm not saying that's the case here, but I'm saying that if you start down that road, that's where it will end for you. For the best thing is to leave it as Allah Azza wa Jal said it. But to say that we don't know the kayfiyah of the sujood of the mountains, we don't know how the mountain makes sajda, or how the sun makes sajda. We know from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that every day the sun makes sajda to Allah below the arsh and asks Allah's permission to rise again. That's why when I came to the footnote about the issue of the earth orbiting the sun and the sun orbiting the earth, I say, Muhammad Tim, are you living in the Middle Ages? Do you not know that the earth orbits the sun and it spins around, and that's why the sun rises? Sahih, that's the zahir of what we see with our eyes, and that's what it seems to be. Be careful about something that it's going to get you into hot water in regards to an ayah or a hadith, and you're going to end up having to explain the ayah and hadith away. The Prophet ﷺ said, the sun makes sajda under the arsh, and it asks permission to rise again. I don't know how that is. Does that mean the earth stops spinning? Does that mean the earth spins the other way? Does that mean that the earth, instead of going that way around the sun, goes that way around the sun? Or does that mean the sun is going around the earth, but we don't perceive it? that the sun is going around the earth, but we don't perceive it. Yani our satellites and telescopes and all that stuff doesn't perceive it. Leave the matter to Allah Azza wa Jal and suffice yourself with what Allah said in the Qur'an. وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ قِيلًا. No one is more truthful than Allah in speech. And from this is also when we mentioned the ayah, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. This is also from the evidences of the ayah, that take the Qur'an according to the language that is used in the Qur'an. Because the minute you start explaining it away, طيب, على سبيل المثال, tomorrow, scientists come and say, you know what it is, we've just realized, guys, that we were completely wrong. And actually, the sun is spinning around the earth. على سبيل المثال. For example, I'm not saying that's the case. I don't have a view my view is whatever Allah said, that's the truth. Like, and the point is that if that happened tomorrow, what would you do? And you built a whole argument about how this ayah doesn't mean that, and this ayah doesn't mean that, and this is not sujood here, and this doesn't mean that, and that doesn't mean this. What will you then do? Isn't it better to take the words as Allah said them, and then to say we don't know how that is? I don't know how it is that the sun goes under the arsh and asks permission to rise. What I can see with my eyes is the earth goes around the sun. That's what seems to be what I can see with my eyes, that the earth goes around the sun. That's what it seems to be with my eyes. And I don't know how is it that the sun goes under the arsh and asks permission to rise again, and how will the sun rise from the west instead of the east? I believe in it and I leave the kayfiyah to Allah. فَهَذَا هُوَ الْأَسْلَمُ وَالْأَحْوَطُ وَالْأَفْضَلُ. That's the safer, that's what's going to make you safe. I believe in what Allah said, and what I don't understand, I leave it to Allah. That doesn't stop me saying what I see with my eyes. I don't have to say, I don't see the earth going around the sun. What we can see, ظاهرا, from our eyes, is that, that's what it seems to be. Like, I doubt what my eyes see, I don't doubt what Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Qur'an. I might doubt because my eyes haven't in reality seen it. I've never in reality seen the earth go around anything. I've never even seen the earth except a picture from the satellites yet. I don't doubt what is in the Qur'an at all. I just don't know how, there are certain things, Allah knows how it is. I don't know how it is. That's my argument in that regard, that is how we should approach these ayat, the sujood of the mountains and so on. Like, for example, when it comes to the birds speaking, or the birds making tasbih, you don't explain it away. You don't say it's not tasbih here. It doesn't mean that they're not saying subhanallah, because it doesn't mean that. It means something else. And you just take it as it is and say no one knows how it happens except Allah. That's going to keep you safe, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And this, many of the people, they follow in also making sujood in the way that human beings are told to make sujood, which is our knees and our hands and our forehead, in the way we make sujood. Many people follow that. And many people, punishment is justified for them. And the one that Allah Azza wa Jal humiliates, they'll never have any honor, and Allah does whatever He wills. And this is we're to number 6 from the mawadi' sajdat tilawah in the Qur'an. Surah Al-Hajj is the only surah that has 2 sujood tilawah in it. And the second one is the one where there is the khilaf, right? The second one is the one where there was some of the ulama who the difference of opinion in it. But it's the correct version. The correct view is that it's established. So you have sujood tilawah twice in Surah Al-Hajj. Here and on the last page of Surah Al-Hajj, you have sujood tilawah as well.
هذان خصمان اختصموا في ربهم فالذين كفروا قطعت لهم ثياب من نار يصب من فوق رؤوسهم الحميم. These are 2 adversaries who have disputed over their Lord. But those who disbelieved will have cut out for them garments of fire, poured upon their heads will be scalding water.
Scalding.
Scalding.
And the two adversaries are the believers and the disbelievers. The believers and the disbelievers disputed over their Lord. But Allah is going to tell you what is the reality of the disbelievers.
يُصْحَرُ بِهِ مَا فِي بُطُونِهِمْ وَالْجُلُودِ, by which is melted that within their bellies and their skins.
And you imagine when they fill their stomach with Zaqum, the tree of Zaqum, and it fills their stomach to the point where they have filled it with a poison that if a single drop fell upon this earth, everything in the earth would die. And they fill their stomach with it. And then from the pain and the torment of the tree of Zaqum, or they fill their stomach with the pus from the wounds of the people of Jahannam. And then what do? They beg for water. So Allah Azza wa Jal gives them water. But the water they get is scalding water that melts the skin from their face and melts the inside of their bellies. And this is, it's not a punishment. You cannot find words to describe it except with what Allah and the Rasul ﷺ described it with.
وَلَهُمْ مَقَامِعُ مِنْ حَدِيدٍ, and for striking them on maces of iron.
Any rods of iron, Any rods, it says here in Muhsin Khan, hooked rods. I will see what does Sa'di say about it. Rahimahullah ta'ala. He said, that the hands of the angels, who are al-ghilad, the shidad, the strong, severe angels over Jahannam, will strike them with these iron rods. I want to see what is one moment. I want to see this word in English. Well, I'll be honest, some of these words in English, I don't know what they are. Naam, a mace is a heavy club with a spiked head. Naam, that's what is meant. And a mace, a heavy club with a spike on its head. The angels who are ghiladun shidad, severe angels, they will strike them over the heads with these rods of iron, or spiked rods of iron.
كلما أرادوا أن يخرجوا منها من غم أعيدوا فيها وذوقوا عذاب الحريق. Every time they want to get out of it from anguish, they will be returned to it, and it will be said, taste the punishment of the burning fire.
No.
إن الله يدخل الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار يحلون فيها من أساور من ذهب ولؤلؤا ولباسهم فيها حرير. Indeed, Allah will admit those who believe and do righteous deeds to gardens beneath which rivers flow. They will be adorned therein with bracelets of gold and pearl, and their garments therein will be silk.
And this is the second group that debated, that they fought with each other about the reality of the Dar al-Akhirah, the believers and the disbelievers. So Allah told the reality of the disbelievers, and now Allah Azza wa Jal tells the reality of the believers.
وهدوا إلى الطيب من القول وهدوا إلى صراط الحميد. And they've been guided in worldly life to good speech, and they were guided to the path of the praiseworthy.
And that is because all of the Sharia contains infinite wisdom, and all of the Sharia contains the praise of Allah Azza wa Jal, and all of the Sharia is praiseworthy. And this path is the path which takes a person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to paradise. So they were guided to the best of speech and actions.
إن الذين كفروا ويصدون عن سبيل الله والمسجد الحرام الذي جعلناه للناس سواء العاكف فيه والباد ومن يرد فيه بإلحاد بظلم نذقه من عذاب أليم. Indeed, those who have disbelieved and avert people from the way of Allah and from Al-Masjid al-Haram, which we made for the people, equal are the resident therein and one from outside, and also whoever intends a deed therein of deviation in religion by wrongdoing will make him taste of a painful punishment.
And these people, they joined between two things. And we say this all the time. The kuffar here, they joined between two things. They joined between kufr and between as-sadd an sabilillah. Because kufr in itself might not always be a reason to fight someone. What I mean by that is, if someone is a disbeliever, but their heart is open to learning about Islam or considering Islam, that's different to someone who is a disbeliever and their heart is committed to taking people away from Islam. So they join between two things, disbelief and stopping other people from believing. And they stopped people from the way of Allah, and they stopped people from Al-Masjid al-Haram. And from those that they stopped is the Prophet ﷺ and his companions in the famous story that happened with regard to the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, where they prevented the Prophet ﷺ and his companions from the Masjid al-Haram. The Masjid al-Haram, as Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala said, لَيْسَ مُلْكًا لَهُمْ. It doesn't belong to them. What right do Quraysh have to stop people going to the Masjid al-Haram when it doesn't belong to them? Rather, the Masjid al-Haram is for everyone, regardless of whether they are a resident of Mecca or whether they are a visitor. So al-Aqif is the resident and al-Bad is the one who is coming from the outside. And whoever intends a deviation in there inside of the Haram, we will make him taste a painful punishment. Here, there is a point that the ulama mentioned, that Mecca is unique. What is Mecca unique in from this? Can you read the translation for yourself? The second part of the translation. Whoever intends a deed of deviation, we will make him taste a painful punishment. What makes Mecca unique here from all the other places in the world?
Because sinning in Mecca is...
Not sinning in Mecca. What is it specifically here that's mentioned? You're right, it's to do with sinning, but what is mentioned?
From outside.
No, after that. Sinning.
Whoever intends a deed.
Intending to sin in Mecca is deserving of punishment. Whereas everywhere else, it's only doing sin that is worthy of punishment. But in Mecca, intending a sin, having an intention of going to Mecca in order to sin is sufficient for the punishment inside the Haram. That's why some of the Sahaba, they lived outside of the Haram. This place is not like any other place. In the Haram boundary of Mecca, the one who inside of it intends to cause corruption, they are punished for their intention, regardless of whether they carry it out or not.
وَإِذْ بَوَّأْنَا لِإِبْرَاهِيمَ مَكَانَ الْبَيْتِ أَلَّا تُشْرِكْ بِي شَيْئًا وَطَهِّرْ بَيْتِيَ لِلطَّائِفِينَ وَالْقَائِمِينَ وَالرُّكَّعِ السُّجُودِ. And mention, O Muhammad, when we designated for Ibrahim the site of the house, saying, do not associate anything with me and purify my house for those who perform tawaf, and those who stand in prayer, and those who bow and prostrate.
Now, here, when we assign the place, they say that the Kaaba was originally, the place of the Kaaba was originally marked by the angels, and that Adam was the first one to worship there. And he saw it has a history before Ibrahim with the angels and with Adam. However, Ibrahim is the one who built it in the form that it is known today, actually slightly different to the form that it's known today, because the semicircular wall in the time of Ibrahim was part of the Kaaba. So the Kaaba would have been a rectangle with a semicircle at one end. The Kaaba would have been a rectangle having a semicircle at one end. But that semicircle, Quraysh were not able to build it with enough halal money, so they built it as a semicircular wall. The Prophet ﷺ had wanted to demolish it and rebuild it, but he said to Aisha radiallahu anha, if it was not for the fact that your people were new to Islam, I would have demolished. And he was scared of a bigger evil, of a greater evil. He knew that what will happen is if I demolish it, people will say Muhammad came to demolish the Kaaba. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They're new to Islam. They will not be able to take it in their hearts to see the Kaaba be demolished. He said, otherwise, if they were established in Islam, I would have took the Kaaba down and I would have rebuilt it in the same shape that Ibrahim built it. That is with two doors on both sides as it used to be, and the doors down to the level of the floor as they used to be, and people could freely go in and out, and with the semicircular wall as part of the building itself. Two major changes were made to the Kaaba. First of all, the semicircular wall became a wall instead of part of the Kaaba. It became out like just a chest height, a wall of chest height. And secondly, the doors. The second door was blocked and the first door was raised up high. And the first door is about what? In chest height or a bit higher, and it's high, the first door. And that is in order to stop people going inside except the ones that Quraysh wanted to go inside. And to limit access to the Kaaba. For the Prophet ﷺ said, if it were not for your people being new to Islam, I would have demolished the Kaaba and rebuilt it upon the form of Ibrahim. Like in here, the Prophet ﷺ, some of the ulama differed after he died, and they said the people are established in Islam, should it be rebuilt? The correct answer is no. If the Prophet ﷺ didn't do it, so we don't do it. We leave the Kaaba as it is, with a single door raised up high and the semicircular wall as it is now. Because the Prophet ﷺ left it, and if the people wouldn't tolerate for the Prophet ﷺ to rebuild the Kaaba, for they're certainly not going to tolerate for us to rebuild the Kaaba. Leave the Kaaba as it is. But the Prophet ﷺ wanted, his intention was, if it were not for the fact that people are newly entered into Islam, and this might shake their faith, I would have rebuilt the Kaaba. But because they're new to Islam and I'm worried about a worse outcome, that some of them will leave Islam because of it, leave the Kaaba as it is. And purify, and don't associate anything with me in worship. That was the message given to every prophet. And purify the Kaaba and Masjid al-Haram, keep it clean, keep it pure for those who perform tawaf, and those who stand in prayer, and those who bow, and those who prostrate.
وأذن في الناس بالحج يأتوك رجالا وعلى كل ضامر يأتين من كل فج عميق. And proclaim to the people the Hajj, pilgrimage. They will come to you on foot and on every lean camel, and they will come from every distant pass.
Now this is from the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are two ayat in it. The first is the call of Ibrahim. Ibrahim is told, give the adhan for Hajj. Any adhan here, al-ma'na al-lughawi, not the adhan of the salah. Any cry out to the people to come to Hajj. Ibrahim said, my Lord, my voice will not reach all of the people on the earth. Allah Azza wa Jal said to him, you call and I will have the responsibility that your voice will reach all of the people. For Hajj has been something since the time of Ibrahim. And almost all of our rituals are taken from the rituals of Ibrahim. The Prophet ﷺ said, خُذُوا عَنِّي مَنَاسِكَكُمْ, take from me your rituals of Hajj and Umrah. learn how I make the Hajj and Umrah. Like originally they came from Ibrahim. They came from Ibrahim. The second sign is the people coming to Mecca for the Hajj. And when you see the people until now, millions, how many people come to Hajj every single year? And you see them coming on every possible means of transport. You see now in this day, you see buses as far as the eye can see. You see trains, you see planes, you see people walking, you see people on motorbikes, you see people in every possible means of transport. You will see people cramming themselves into Mecca for the Hajj, coming from every distant land. And you see people coming from the other side of the world for the Hajj. And yes, no doubt it's an ayah min ayatillah, but it's even more profound if you think about how it used to be back in the day. Until very recently, let's say until the last 100 years, approximately, if you went to Hajj, you would not come back, typically, or you would not come back for a very long time. And it's only in the last 100 years that you can say that Hajj became a short trip. Even 100 years is pushing it, but taqreeban, you can say that in the last 100 years, Hajj became something that you can go and do for a week or 10 days and you can come back. And in reality, I think the shortest Hajj that you could do is what? And realistically, the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and it's like 5-6 days is realistically is the shortest. It is possible that you would come on Yawm Arafah and still get the Hajj, the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. The shortest possible would be 4 days. Like realistically, about 6 days is the shortest someone would be able to do it. And it's shortest realistic. Otherwise, if you're in Mecca or if you are in like Medina or nearby, you could complete it inside of 4 days at a push. Like, it never used to be the case that people could just go and come. Hajj was a lifetime journey. And you said goodbye to your family that I might never ever see you again. I'm going to Hajj. Maybe people went to Hajj and they settled in new cities along the way. And when they came back from the Hajj, many never ever went back home. It was a journey of a lifetime. And to see people in that time coming from the other side of the world, some of them months upon months of traveling by sea, traveling by foot, traveling by camel, across huge amounts of the world to reach Mecca for the Hajj. For this is a sign from the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
ليشهدوا منافع لهم ويذكروا اسم الله في أيام معلومات على ما رزقهم من بهيمة الأنعام فكلوا منها وأطعموا البائس الفقير. That they may witness benefits for themselves and mention the name of Allah on known days over what He has provided for them of sacrificial animals. So eat of them and feed the miserable and poor.
Just one moment, there's one I wanted to check. Now, I don't think the miserable and poor is the right translation here, because it makes it seem like they are two separate people. Al-Ba'is al-Faqir is the one who is miserably poor, maybe, and he desperately poor. But miserable and poor sounds like they are two separate people, but they're not. And the one who is miserably poor, yani shadid al-faqr. So first of all, that they may witness benefits for themselves. The benefits of Hajj are of two types: manafi' deeniyah and manafi' dunyawiyah. Benefits in the deen and benefits in the dunya. So they have benefits in their deen. right? In their religion, they have benefits. Their tawbah, yani what did the Prophet ﷺ said? وَالْحَجِّ الْمَبْرُورِ لَيْسَ لَهُ جَزَاءٌ إِلَّا الْجَنَّةِ. An accepted Hajj has no reward except Jannah. There are manafi' deeniyah, but there are manafi' dunyawiyah. And if you're going for a lifetime, for sure you're going to trade. And you're permitted. What's that? Which surah did the ayah come about the permissibility of trade in Hajj? Surah Al-Baqarah. لَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَن تَبْتَغُوا فَضْلًا مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. There's no harm for you to seek a worldly benefit while doing the Hajj. Because at the end of the day, how else will you fund your Hajj? And you're going for maybe years at that time. Certainly months upon months you're going. So you'll bring some products from your country and you'll sell it to people along the way, and you buy products from other countries along the way, and you go to Mecca and you sell people some things, or you do some work for them. And there are worldly benefits. And from the benefits of the Hajj is connecting with your brothers and sisters all over the world. Because reality is, what connection do I have or knowledge do I have of Muslims in the Far East, for example? Like when you go to Hajj, you hear the affairs of the Muslims, the akhbar of the Muslims. What's it like in your country? How are the situation for the Muslims there? And you network as Muslims together. For there are benefits in the deen and benefits in the dunya. And so they mentioned the name of Allah on specific days on the sacrificial animals. These specific days are which days of the Hajj? So let's just get the days of the Hajj organized in our mind. What day does the Hajj start on of Dhul Hijjah? Not the first, no. 8th. The Hajj starts on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. Sahih, the Umrah could come before that, Umrah al-Qudum, when you come to Mecca and you make the Umrah. But the Hajj itself starts on the 8th day of Dhul Hijjah. And that is the day of transporting the water from Mecca to Mina. Because remember, Mina is inside of Mecca, but Mina is not a place where people usually live. It's only lived in during the Hajj. Now, Allahu A'lam, in Mecca has become very big. But typically, it's only lived in, it's what's called the tent city, right? The city of tents. It's only lived in the days of the Hajj. So it doesn't have its own, or it didn't have its own dedicated water supply. So the people, what they would do is, they would ferry water and food and what they needed, they would ferry it to Mina on the 8th day. And in Mina, what do you do in Mina on the 8th day? You arrive before Dhuhr, ideally. And you pray Dhuhr on time, 2 raka'at. And Asr on time, 2 raka'at. And Maghrib on time, 3 raka'at. And Isha on time, 2 raka'at. So each of the prayers at its proper time, but shortened. You don't pray the rawatib, the prayers that are connected to the fard prayers, like the sunnah before and after. And that's a general rule. When you shorten the prayers, you don't pray the rawatib. Anytime you shorten the prayer. Because if you're going to shorten dhuhr to 2 raka'at, you're not going to pray 4 raka'at before and 2 raka'at after, right? You're shortening the dhuhr. And they remember Allah Azza wa Jal there. They also pray Fajr there on the 9th day. They pray Fajr there ideally. It doesn't have to be. Like they pray Fajr there. 2 raka'at is normal. They do pray the Sunnah before Fajr. Now, that the Prophet ﷺ didn't leave when he was traveling. And they also can pray the unrelated prayers like Qiyamul Layl. And obviously they pray Witr and all of that. The Prophet ﷺ never left Witr when he was traveling. But Qiyamul Layl they can pray, Duha they can pray, the ones that are not connected to that. Fajr comes and they pray Fajr on the 9th day in Arafah. In Mina. The day of Arafah, which is the 9th day, they pray in Mina. And then they make their way to Arafah. They make their way to Arafah and they reach Arafah before Dhuhr. Or they reach nearby. If they go to the masjid is half inside and half outside of Arafah. It's not completely inside of Arafah. The masjid is half between. They go and they pray Dhuhr and Asr there, shortened and combined at Dhuhr time. And they bring Asr forward to Dhuhr time and they pray Dhuhr and Asr shortened and combined. And they listen to the khutbah And then after that, they proceed into Arafah. If they're outside, if they're in the masjid, the first half of the masjid, which is outside of Arafah, they proceed inside of Arafah and they stand there and make dua from the time that they leave the masjid, which is immediately after the khutbah, until the sun sets. And when the sun sets, they do not pray Maghrib. They delay Maghrib and they go to Muzdalifah. When they go to Muzdalifah, they reach Muzdalifah after Maghrib, ideally before Isha or around the time of Isha. But in general, they reach it like that. What would happen if on the way, the time for Isha was about to leave? And that happens. It's happened to me a number of times. You pray on the way. You don't wait for Muzdalifah. You pray Maghrib and Isha on the way. Tayyib, now you reached Muzdalifah, which is known as what? In Surah Al-Baqarah, what's Muzdalifah called? فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ عِنْدَ الْمَشْعَرِ الْحَرَامِ. Muzdalifah is called Al-Mash'ar Al-Haram. You reach Muzdalifah, and of course the most important is the dua in Arafah, Al-Hajj wa Arafah. You reach Muzdalifah. And when you reach Muzdalifah, you pray Maghrib and Isha shortened and combined. And you pray your witr prayer, and then you sleep. And your job in Muzdalifah is to sleep. Although anyone who sleeps in Muzdalifah, I say, Allahumma barik, you are blessed. If you can sleep in Muzdalifah, you can sleep anywhere. And you can sleep in a war zone. If you can sleep in Muzdalifah, I think that's a karama min karamat al-awliya. Sleep in Muzdalifah is something that in these days is very, very rare. Like you spend the night. Whether you sleep or you don't, you spend the night in Muzdalifah. You spend the night in Muzdalifah, and then in the morning you pray Fajr. That is for the men who don't have women with them. As for the men that have women and children with them, they leave after half of the night to go towards Mina again. Those men who do not have women and children with them, or those who want to stay behind, they stay until Fajr. They pray Fajr in Muzdalifah, and then they remember Allah at Mash'ar al-Haram until sunrise. They make dua until sunrise. When the sun rises, they head to Mina, and now everyone, whether you left at midnight or whether you left at Fajr, both of you now are, all of you are heading ثُمَّ أَفِيضُوا مِنْ حَيْثُ أَفَاضَ النَّاسِ. Everyone now is heading in the same direction. Everyone is heading towards Mina, where they're going to stone the big Jamara only, Jamaratul Aqaba. So the Jamarat go small, middle, big. And the Jamarat are like pillars, where the shaitan appeared before Ibrahim. So you have small, middle, and big. You skip the small one, skip the middle one, and you stone the big one with 7 stones. They do not have to be washed in Zamzam water, just as a fa'idah. And you can pick them from anywhere. Like in the Prophet ﷺ picked them in Muzdalifah. But you can pick them from anywhere. Now you go and you stone the big Jamara. Why did the women live after half the night? So that they don't get caught in the crowds of men throwing stones. Although it is quieter, definitely. And so they go with their mahram, and they go in and they stone the Jamara early. Ala khilafin bayn ahl al-ilm, when do they have to wait for the Fajr time to start or not? We're not doing a full fiqh. We just want to get, when we listen to the ayat, we want to get the context of what's happening on each day. They stone the big Jamara. After they come from stoning the big Jamara, then they have to do, after the stoning, they have to do 2 more. They have to do 3 more things. Now, everyone has to stone the Jamara. Right? The sick people can give someone the stones to throw on their behalf. Everyone stones the Jamara, in the big Jamara, the big pillar. But after that, there are 2 more things everyone does and 1 thing that not everyone does. So I want you to tell me which is the 1 thing that not everybody does it. So the 2 things that everybody does is the shaving or cutting of the hair and the tawaf al-ifada, the tawaf of Hajj. So they go to Mecca and make the tawaf of Hajj and the tawaf and the sa'i. The tawaf and the sa'i of Hajj. Everyone does that. Taban, the woman who's on her menses, that's a different discussion. She delays it, all that. But everybody does the tawaf and the sa'i, and everybody cuts their hair. And there's one left that not everybody does. What is it on that day? So what we're going to talk about in the ayah. The sacrifice of the animal. Not everyone does it. The one who's making Hajj on its own, just Hajj with no Umrah at all, that person doesn't have a sacrificial animal. The sacrificial animal is for the one who is doing Qiran or Tamattu'. The one who is bringing Umrah and Hajj together in one action, or has done an Umrah followed by a Hajj. That one is the one that has the animal. That animal, when can it be slaughtered? Here is where the ayah comes in. That animal can be slaughtered في أيام معلومات, on known days, which are the 10th, the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th. They are the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th of Dhul Hijjah. Those are the days. And what happens then after you've done the actions of the day of the Hajj, which is the day of Eid? Yawm al-Hajj al-Akbar, the great day of Hajj, which is the day of Eid. It's the best day of the whole year. There's some ahadith came with that. That the best of the days of the year is the day when you slaughter your animals, the day of Eid. And that slaughter is related to the Hajj, right? It's not related to the people at home. The people at home have a slaughter, which is also from these, which is mentioned here. And it's also from that. Like in the slaughter of the people at home is a separate, it's to do with sharing the rights of the Hajj when you don't go to Hajj. The udhiyah. Now, after that comes the 11th, 12th, and 13th. The 11th and 12th are mandatory. You're going to stay in Mina. While staying in Mina, how are you going to pray? The same way you always pray in Mina, which is each prayer is shortened and to a minimum of 2, 3 for Maghrib, and each prayer is prayed on time. And you're going to stone all 3 of the Jamarat on the 11th and 12th. That means you're going to stone the little one and make dua, stone the middle one and make dua, stone the big one and go back to your tent. And that stoning happens typically between Dhuhr and Maghrib, or between Zawal and Maghrib. Just at the time of Dhuhr roughly until Maghrib, until the onset of Maghrib. The people stone all 3. That's on the 11th and the 12th. And that's the only thing you have to do on the 11th and 12th. To remember Allah Azza wa Jal, وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ فِي أَيَّامٍ مَعْدُودَاتٍ. Remember Allah Azza wa Jal on these specific days. Now, and you remember Allah Azza wa Jal on those specific days. طيب. What about the 13th day? So your decision happens on the end of the 12th day. What's your decision? Do I leave or do I stay? فَمَنْ تَعَجَّلَ فِي يَوْمَيْنِ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ وَمَنْ تَأَخَّرَ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. The one who stays for one more day, or the one who holds back, or who goes home. But if you go home, you have to leave by Maghrib. So before Maghrib sets, you leave on the 12th day. If you decide to stay, you're going to stone the Jamara one more time. Immediately after Zawal, you're going to stone the Jamara again. The big, the small one, and make dua, the middle one, and make dua, and then the big one. And then you're going to go for Tawaf al-Wada', the farewell Tawaf, which doesn't have a sa'i on it. It's a Tawaf without the sa'i. And that, broadly speaking, is an overview of what happens on the days of the Hajj. The reason I mentioned that is then, if you look again at the ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah and the ayat of Surah Al-Hajj, now it kind of like, it comes together. So this ayah is speaking about the sacrifice that happens on the 10th, 12th, and 13th days. And as we said, the ayah came down with regard to the hadi, rather than the udhiyah. The meaning here is not specifically the udhiyah, what people call the qurbani that everybody does at home. The meaning here is for the hujjaj, the hadi. The hadi, which is the sacrificial animal, and that is for the one who does an umrah and hajj in the same trip. So what do? You eat from it and you feed the extremely poor people. And you feed the extremely poor people. Is it necessary that you eat from it? And it's a sunnah to eat from it. But if you can't eat from it, and in these days, you really, it's very, very hard. I can't imagine how you could do it. It's not easy. You could go and do it yourself. Like, and it's not easy for you to do it yourself. Generally speaking, you're going to have someone go and do it for you. Like, and you could get someone to do it for you and then get them to give you the meat to eat from. But it's difficult. Generally, people give it all out. And also there's a system these days where they give it abroad as well to the poor people, because there's too much for the people of Mecca, even all the poor people. There's too much. So they have now a new thing where they store it and they send it to poor people elsewhere in the world. Now, the next ayah.
ثم ليقضوا تفثهم وليوفوا نذورهم وليطوفوا بالبيت العتيق. Then let them end their untidiness and fulfill their vows and perform tawaf around the ancient house.
Now, so this is the shaving of the hair. What day does that happen?
15, 14?
Yeah, listen, pay attention to what I said. What day does that happen? In the days of Hajj. The 9th day you're in Arafah, you go to Muzdalifah, you come back, you stone the Jamrah, and what do? You sacrifice the animal and cut your hair.
Oh.
Now,
What's that day then?
so the Eid day.
Which is?
The 10th.
Oh.
Eid day on the 10th. No, it doesn't have to be after the sacrifice. The madhab of the Ahnaf is after the sacrifice. Like, why is it like, why does it not have to be after the sacrifice? I told you the answer. Because not everybody does a sacrifice. So that's the dalil that it doesn't have to be. Because not everyone has a sacrifice. The one who's doing Hajj by himself has no sacrifice at all. That it's not something that is for everyone. Also, what about the one that can't find a sacrifice, can't afford it? They went to Hajj, but they don't have enough money for one. For this reason, the sacrifice is not connected to the other actions. So there's no connection between the sacrifice and the shaving of the head and the tawaf and all of that. Like, when do you end your untidiness? You end it after the shaving of the head in a limited way. And you're permitted to do everything except intimacy. And then when you finish tawaf al-ifada, then after that you have complete tahallul. You can do whatever, after that all your restrictions are lifted. And so some of the restrictions become lifted when you clean your untidiness. You take away the head from your hair, the head from your body, you cut your nails, the things you didn't do when you were in ihram. And after that, you make tawaf. And that is all on Eid day. You can delay the tawaf if you had to delay it till the night of Eid or the 11th day, or even if you had to delay it to tawaf al-wada'. Some of them allowed delaying it to tawaf al-wada'. But generally speaking, the norm is to do it on Eid day. That's why the pilgrims don't have an Eid prayer. The pilgrims don't go to Eid prayer because they have all these actions that they do. They stone the Jamrah, then they take away their untidiness, they shave their hair, or for the women, they cut the tip of a finger from the length of their hair. They cut their nails, they take away their body hair, and then they go and make tawaf. And that's from the actions of the day of Eid.
ذلك ومن يعظم حرمات الله فهو خير له عند ربه وأحلت لكم الأنعام إلا ما يتلى عليكم فاجتنبوا الرجس من الأوثان واجتنبوا قول الزور. That has been commanded, and whoever honors the sacred ordinance of Allah is best for him in the sight of his Lord, and permitted to you are the grazing livestock except what is recited to you, so avoid the uncleanness of idols and avoid false statement.
Afwan, I want to just look at something. نعم ذلك, and that is so, this is being commanded. And whoever honors the sacred commands of Allah, this is best for them in the sight of their Lord. So you have to honor the things that Allah Azza wa Jalla has made sacred. Where was this mentioned already about honoring the things that Allah made sacred? The beginning of which surah? Surah Al-Ma'idah. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تحلوا شعائر الله. And you don't remove the sanctity of the sacred commands and symbols of Islam. And permitted to you is the grazing livestock except those that are prohibited. Where are they prohibited? Yani, for example, those that are prohibited on the second page of Surah Al-Ma'idah. Because the grazing livestock are generally all permitted. The an'am, what are the an'am? The two sheep, the 2 goats, the 2 cows, and the 2 camels. But there are some that are not permitted, which are the ones that are mentioned in Surah Al-Ma'idah. Al-Mawqudha, wal-Mutaraddi'a, wal-Natiha. The animals that fell down from a high place and the ones that gorged, one that gored, they stuck his horns in the other one and killed him. Those ones that we mentioned in Surah Al-Ma'idah. And so leave the uncleanliness of the idols. Because the ultimate uncleanliness is the uncleanliness of idol worship. And avoid false statements. I want to read to you what As-Sa'di says about qawl az-zur. Because some of the ulama, they made it very, it has a lot of meanings in it. He said, qawl az-zur is all of the statements that are haram. Because qawl az-zur is a lie. And from this is false witness. So Allah Azza wa Jal prohibited them from shirk, and Allah Azza wa Jal prohibited them from rijz. فَجْتَنِبُوا الرِّجْز. And He leave everything which is filthy. And Allah prohibited them from every evil speech. So Allah prohibited 3 things in the ayah. فَجْتَنِبُوا الرِّجْز, leave everything which is filthy. Leave idol worship, which is one of the things that is filthy, and leave every statement which is haram, particularly lying and false witness. Like in every statement that is words of falsehood is the best translation for this. Any words of falsehood, I think it's the best one. Any qawl az-zur, because it includes every word that is haram.
حنفاء لله غير مشركين به ومن يشرك بالله فكأنما خر من السماء فتخطفه الطير أو تهوي به الريح في مكان سحيق. Inclining only to Allah, not associating anything with Him. And he who associates with Allah, it is as though he had fallen from the sky and it was snatched by the birds, or the wind carried him down into a remote place.
And I think the Hunafa lillah, the Sahih International Translation, is the best one. Because the other one says upright in devotion, and the other one says worshipping none but Allah. Which is true, but the word Hunafa, that's what it means. Hanif is al-ma'il, meaning the one who only turns towards the worship of Allah, not making any partner with Him. And that is what Allah requires from you, at-tawheed. La ilaha illallah. Worship only Allah and don't make any partners with Him. As for the description of the birds and the wind, this the Prophet ﷺ put it into context. The Prophet ﷺ, in which hadith? In the hadith of Bara ibn Azib al-Tawil, the long hadith of Bara ibn Azib about the punishment of the grave, that when the disbelieving soul is taken to the heavens, it will ask permission to enter the first heaven, and permission will never be given to it. And the Prophet ﷺ recited the ayah from Surah Al-A'raf, they're not going to go into heaven until the camel goes through, حتى يلج الجمل في سم الخياط, until the camel goes through the eye of the needle. What will happen to that soul? Will the angels carry it down to the grave? The disbelieving soul? No, what will happen to it is what is described here. The angels will throw that soul from the top of the heavens and they will allow it to fall down to the earth. Yani it will be thrown from the sky, and perhaps the birds will snatch it or the wind will carry it to a faraway place until it lands upon the grave of the where the body is for it to be buried. For they will not carry it down, rather they will throw it down. So the Prophet ﷺ recited this ayah. For the ayah is more general than that, but the ayah, the Prophet ﷺ explained that this ayah it comes to mind in when the soul is thrown down from the disbelieving soul is thrown down from the heavens.
ذلك ومن يعظم شعائر الله فإنها من تقوى القلوب. That is so, and whoever honors the symbols of Allah indeed is from the piety of hearts.
In As-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, in the previous ayah, he mentions it as being more general. And for example, you can say that the person who made shirk, it is as though he's been snatched away, and the shaitan snatches him to any place. He has no thabat, he's not firm. He can be carried off to any place. My point was that the Prophet ﷺ recited the ayah in the context of the soul that is thrown down from the heavens. But the ayah itself is more general in wording than that. It's not just restricted to that. Generally, the example given is the example of one that is snatched away by the birds or taken away by the wind. They have no foundation. The shaitan takes them on any path, away from the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, after that, ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. ذَلِكَ, that is so. And whoever honors the symbols of Allah, the symbols of the religion, the symbols of the religion, the rites of the Hajj, the adhan, the salah, the hijab, all of these are min sha'air Allah, the things that are the symbols of Islam. Islam is known by them. These are the sha'air of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But specifically the ayah came with regard to Hajj, the rites of the Hajj. For example, Mina and Muzdalifah and Arafat. This is from at-taqwa. And that means also that it is from the sins and huge disobedience to Allah to disrespect the symbols of Islam.
لكم فيها منافع إلى أجل مسمى ثم محلها إلى البيت العتيق. For you therein are benefits for a specified term, then their place of sacrifice is at the ancient house.
The ancient house is the Kaaba, but here the ancient house is inside of the Haram. The meaning of the ancient house is inside of the Haram. The Haram only applies to Mecca. It applies to Mecca and Medina, Like there's a difference between the two. As for Mecca, Ibrahim made it a Haram. And the Haram is the boundary of Mecca. And Medina, the Prophet ﷺ made it a Haram. And the boundary is between Ayr and Thawr, between the mountains of Ayr and Thawr. The difference is that in Mecca there are specific laws about the Haram that are specific to it. And here from the sacrifice also is from the laws, and from the laws of it, many of the scholars said that the salah is multiplied 100,000 times anywhere in the boundary of Mecca. Some of them took that view. Whereas Medina, it's only the masjid where it's multiplied 10,000 times. So here, you can benefit from your animals. You're allowed to drink the milk. You're allowed to any benefit from those animals, the sacrificial animals, for a limited time. But ultimately, the destination of those sacrificial animals is the haram of Mecca, to be sacrificed in the name of Allah.
وَلِكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ جَعَلْنَا مَنسَكًا لِيَذْكُرُوا اسْمَ اللَّهِ عَلَى مَا رَزَقَهُم مِّن بَهِيمَةِ الْأَنْعَامِ فَإِلَٰهُكُمْ إِلَٰهٌ وَاحِدٌ فَلَهُ أَسْلِمُوا وَبَشِّرِ الْمُخْبِتِينَ. And for every religious community, we have appointed a rite of sacrifice, that they may mention the name of Allah over what He has provided for them of sacrificial animals. For your God is one God, so to Him submit. And O Muhammad, give good tidings to the humble before their Lord.
And here, this could be used as an evidence, by the way, for the obligation of Ahlul Kitab saying Bismillah. It could be put forward as evidence for that. Because here Allah says, every religious community, we gave them a right of sacrifice, so they mention the name of Allah. فَقَدْ يُقَالِ if Ahlul Kitab don't mention the name of Allah, in that case, the ayah could be brought. But here it says every single nation has a right of sacrifice. And the benefit is for two reasons. Because we're going to hear that the blood and the meat doesn't reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah doesn't eat from the sacrifice, nor does He benefit from it subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there are two reasons why the sacrifice rites exist. The first reason is for the remembrance of Allah, so that people will remember the name of Allah every time they sacrifice. And from it is to show gratitude to Allah for what He's given you. نعم.
الذين إذا ذكر الله وجلت قلوبهم والصابرين على ما أصابهم والمقيم الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. Who, when Allah is mentioned, their hearts are fearful, and to the patient over what has afflicted them, and the establishers of prayer, and those who spend from what we have provided them.
And they are the mukhbitun, the ones who obey Allah with humility. They are the people whose hearts tremble when Allah is remembered. They are the people who patiently endure what happens to them. Yani the qadr of Allah, aqdarillahi al-mu'limah, the difficult decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are the ones who establish the prayer and pay out of what we have provided, yani the sadaqah and the zakah. They are the mukhbitun, yani those people who are mentioned in the ayah that is previously. They submitted to Allah in alone, la ilaha illallah. Their hearts tremble at the remembrance. They are patient when Allah decrees a difficulty. They establish the prayer and they spend from the zakah and the sadaqat. So they are the ones that Allah Azza wa Jal described them as al-mukhbitun, those who obey Allah with humility.
وَالْبُدْنَ جَعَلْنَاهَا لَكُمْ مِنْ شَعَائِرِ اللَّهِ لَكُمْ فِيهَا خَيْرٌ فَاذْكُرُوا اسْمَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهَا صَوَافَّ فإذا وجبت جنوبها فكلوا منها وأطعموا القانع والمعتر كذلك سخرناها لكم لعلكم تشكرون. And the camels and cattle we have appointed for you, as among the symbols of Allah, for you therein is good. So mention the name of Allah upon them when lined up for sacrifice, and when they are lifeless on their sides, then eat for them and feed the needy who does not seek aid and the beggar. Thus have we subjected them to you that you may be grateful.
Now, the Buddhan are the cows or the oxen or the camels, any that are given in sacrifice. And they are from the rites, the symbols of Allah, them being taken to be sacrificed. So mention the name of Allah when they are lined up for sacrifice, sawaf, when they're lined up to be sacrificed. I don't know if you've seen how they sacrifice a camel. It's wallahi, it's a ayah min ayatillah. How they sacrifice a camel, and it's not the way you sacrifice a sheep. And the sheep, you take you pull back the neck and you slit the throat. Like the camel is very, very dignified. It's worth looking at it. And I don't know if I can describe it. Like they line it up in a row, and the camel when it dies, it's very it's a profound, and it's very dignified, subhanAllah. And so they line it up in rows. So when they are lifeless on their sides, eat from them and feed the one who does not beg and the one who does. And those needy people who don't ask, they're not queuing up and saying, give me. But they're needy. And the people who are queuing up and saying, give me from the sacrifice. This is why Allah Azza wa Jal has made them under your control, and He subjected them for you. So you can be grateful. For from the benefits of the sacrifice is feeding the needy and being grateful to Allah for what He's given you.
لن ينال الله لحومها ولا دماؤها ولكن يناله التقوى منكم كذلك سخرها لكم لتكبروا الله على ما هداكم وبشر المحسنين. Their meat will not reach Allah, nor will their blood, but what reaches Him is piety from you. Thus have we subjected them to you that you may glorify Allah for that to which He has guided you, and give good tidings to the doers of good.
And this contains the sincerity of what you do for the sake of Allah. And it's not the blood and it's not the meat that reaches Allah, but your sincerity for the sake of Allah. Your taqwa, doing the right thing, keeping away from what is haram, keeping away from showing off. It's not an adah. And this shows this is an ibadah. And this is from the evidences that sacrifice is from the major ibadat. Because taqwa is mentioned with regard to it. It's from the major ibadat. It is not from the adat. What do we mean by the adat? Like the customs of people, you sacrifice to eat, right? You kill the animal to eat. It's not like that. This is an ibadah that the taqwa of it benefits you in the akhirah. You get rewarded for it. You get punished for it if you make a partner with Allah in it. And this is important because these are things that people could mistake them for adat. People could think this is just, look, people kill animals to eat, to live, to survive. But it's not that. It's a ritual that is done for the purpose of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as well as the benefit of eating from it and so on. So this is where people may, and I'll mention this, I'm not going to mention any after that. I'm going to stop here at this ayah. But I wanted you to understand that the religion is what defines worship from customs. You shouldn't necessarily use your reasoning in that exclusively. And that's why you see people, for example, saying celebrating birthdays is not a religious action. Do you see what I mean? People say well, what's the problem with it? It's not really, I don't celebrate, for example, I celebrate Christmas, but I don't celebrate religiously. Or you say people saying, I celebrate birthdays, but I don't celebrate them religiously. You don't decide what is a part of the religious rituals and isn't. Allah Azza wa Jal decides. You might look at sacrifice and say people just kill animals to eat. Like in Allah Azza wa Jal says that it's a matter of taqwa, that it's a matter of niyyah, that it's a matter of ibadah. And it's from the things that make you from those worshippers of Allah. It's from the sha'air of Allah. You don't look at things and decide that this is a custom just based on your feelings. And personally, I take it as a custom. And for example, someone who bows to someone else and says, it's just customary and we just bow to greet each other. You don't decide. If Allah Azza wa Jal has declared it to be part of the acts of worship or part of what is regulated by Islam, you don't decide. The Prophet ﷺ, when he came to Medina, he found the Ansar had 2 days of Eid, and 2 celebratory days. He cancelled them. He said, Allah has replaced them with 2 days that are better for you, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. After that, it's not permissible for anyone to make an Eid, any Eid. After that, not Eid al-Hub, Valentine's Day, and not Eid al-Milad, birthday, and not Eid or whatever other kind of Eid there is. You cannot have an Eid after that. Eid is regulated in the religion. It's an ibadah by which you thank Allah for His blessings. It's not your choice to do it for whatever you want to have an Eid for. But this is something to bear in mind, that the ibadat, the rituals and the symbols of Islam, Allah Azza wa Jal designates them, and there are things that you can look at your judgment in it. Like generally speaking, it goes back to the daleel. So your personal feeling that this is just my habit, and he doesn't take it away from being an ibadah, which is tawqifiyah. It has to be done the way that the Prophet ﷺ showed you. And there is flexibility in certain things. Like I just want you to highlight that it's not sacrificing an animal is not an adah, it's an ibadah. It's not a cultural habit or a norm of the people. It's an act of worship. For there is shirk in it. If you do it the wrong way, you can leave Islam by sacrificing to other than Allah Azza wa Jal. قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Because of the time, we were a bit slow today. I thought we'd be okay, but I probably went off on a very long tangent about Hajj, and we started talking about Ashrat al-Sa'a, and we went a bit around. So inshallah ta'ala we'll catch up. How many pages do we have to reach? 4 pages. Khalas, we'll catch up this evening inshallah ta'ala. Those 4 pages bi'idhnillah ta'ala. As I said, for those who are catching this, didn't catch the beginning, that we will have a different schedule when it comes to the last 10 days. Not quite finalized it yet, but we do plan to have a different schedule. I also want to highlight some things that from time to time in these videos, I say from time to time, actually quite a lot, there are things that I say that I can make a mistake, a slip of the tongue. And we're doing the whole Qur'an and we are going fast. Like I said, for some reason this morning, my brain was thinking about something else, and I didn't include Ya'juj and Ma'juj in the Ashrat al-Sa'at al-Kubra, but they are. They are from the Ashrat al-Sa'at al-Kubra. And for some reason, I was thinking of something else. For these things, we will cut them out when the videos are made properly, inshallah ta'ala. We'll edit them out. We'll correct any mistakes that are made. We try our best not to make them, sometimes things happen. We'll cut them out, and also some of the going off on a tangent, we can also look at it and see if it's necessary. And if it's not necessary, we can, the final videos, we can cut it out, inshallah ta'ala. Be patient with us in that. Sometimes it happens. Sabq lisan, you say something you don't mean to say, or you thinking about something different. I was thinking about something different. I was thinking about the Mahdi. That was coming in my mind. I was talking about Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and I was thinking about the Mahdi. The Mahdi is not from the Ashrat al-Sa'at al-Kubra. The Mahdi is not from the Ashrat, because why? It's not kharq al-'ada. Someone being appointed among the Muslims is not itself supernatural. Like the Mahdi is from that which precedes the Ashrat al-Sa'at al-Kubra by a very short time. It's like the beginning of the beginning. But it's not strictly from the 10 signs, the Mahdi. So that's what I was thinking of when I was talking about, and I was talking about Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and my mind was going on the other topic. These things, we'll cut them out. So forgive us if we have sometimes we slip up, or if we mention something wrong, an ayah wrong. Sometimes it comes out wrong. Or if we mention maybe a hadith with something the wrong way around. We try our best not to, but if it does happen, and la yaslam minhu ahad, and no one is free of it completely, then inshallah we will be editing these videos and making it, and cleaning them up as well, inshallah. That's what Allah Azza wa Jalla made easy for him to mention. Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.